Some of the most valuable export industries in the world come from places you'd never expect. Small European countries dominate dairy, agriculture, and high-end watchmaking, and one South American country supplies nearly half of all the sugar traded worldwide. Here are some of the surprising powerhouses behind the products the world relies on. Chile exports more than $3 billion of cherries each year, making it the world's top supplier. With the ideal amount of sun and chilly winter temperatures, plus mountains and deserts that block pests, the country is one of the best places to grow them. Every summer, tens of thousands of workers move through cherry orchards across central Chile. The harvest is a race against the clock. Pickers have just a few weeks to collect the fruit at peak ripeness. From there, the cherries head to massive packing facilities where conveyor belts, sorters, and cold rooms process millions of pounds a day. Workers hand trim the stems, sort out imperfections, and pack the fruit into crates that need to be chilled within hours to survive long journeys overseas. Chile may have nature on its side, but in the Netherlands, farmers are proving you don't need perfect conditions to grow produce.
The Netherlands is the second largest exporter of agricultural products in the world, despite being only a little bigger than the state of Maryland. How does a country this size even come close to the US, the world's top exporter? By devoting more than half of its land to farming and focusing on high-value goods like eggs, meat, cheese, tomatoes, and peppers.
We are sweet and tiny. It's in our genes, it's our DNA.
In 2024 alone, the Dutch farmed goods worth over $140 billion. The country pioneered greenhouse growing and now uses robots and algorithms that predict yield, optimize water use, and can even tell when a tomato is ripe. But its position at the top is being threatened. Soaring energy prices, labor shortages, and new rules limiting pollution are squeezing the industry. So how did the Dutch become a global agricultural powerhouse? And more importantly, what can its model teach the rest of the world about how to grow more with less? In the 13th century, nearly a fifth of what is now the Netherlands was underwater. So the Dutch built dikes to hold back the sea and pioneered the use of windmills to pump out the leftover water. Over centuries, a complex system of pumps kept low-lying land dry. And from this reclaimed land, small family farms fed the country. But that all changed during World War II, when Nazi Germany took over. In 1944, Dutch rail workers went on strike, protesting the occupation. In response, the Nazis cut off food supplies. Over 5 months, 20,000 people died from starvation. It became known as the Winter of Hunger. After the war, food security became a national priority. Under the new agricultural minister Sicko Mansholt, the government industrialized farming. He subsidized important agricultural products and merged farms into bigger, more efficient ones. Public investment in research and education transformed Wageningen University into the country's secret weapon. Its research has been used in over 150 countries. Over the years, it has spun off dozens of startups. This one gathers electricity from living plants, and this one builds robotic harvesters. You can find Dutch-inspired greenhouses covering thousands of acres in Spain, Canada, and China. It all started in Westland, an area just outside of Rotterdam, with one of the world's largest concentrations of greenhouses. After dark, they light up the horizon in orange, purple, and green hues from the powerful lamps used to speed up plant growth.
Some people say it will never be really dark in Westland.
Here, Margriet Looya runs a third-generation tomato farm called Looya Kukers.
How did your grandfather grow vegetables? I'm guessing it didn't look like this.
No, not at all. It was completely different than in these days.
In these greenhouses, plants can grow a foot a week. Marguerite's team prunes, wraps, and lowers each one by hand.
if you didn't control the vines?
Oh, yeah, then you will get the jungle.
The Netherlands exports more than 900,000 tons of tomatoes a year, despite having a climate that's naturally too cold and rainy for these warm weather fruits. While high-tech solutions help them grow faster and year-round, they still need bees to pollinate every plant.
You cannot do it without them. So they are probably one of the most important tools that we have in our glass house.
When they're not pollinating, they live in these bee hotels.
In each box are around 800 bumblebees. You can hear them making more noise. Now, they are still cool.
Overhead, LED lights mimic the sun and create optimal summer conditions year-round. Developed by scientists at Wageningen, these lights run more efficiently than older sodium bulbs.
With the same electricity, you can get almost double light.
Watering these plants has also become more efficient. Over the last 2 decades, greenhouses have reduced their water usage by as much as 90%.
The water will fall here, and it will go back at the end of the row, and then it will go into a drain silo. We will clean this water and we will reuse it.
That means it takes just 4 liters of water to grow a kilo of Dutch tomatoes, compared to the global average of more than 200 liters. While tech has optimized much of the growing process, humans still pick tomatoes better than robots, which struggle to see the fruit through these dense vines.
It's ready to be harvested when the last tomato, this one, is completely red. For example, these two are just perfect. These are ready to be harvested because that's the moment when they have the best taste.
Workers follow this chart to harvest tomatoes at peak flavor.
This is green, so it's color number 3, so not ready. This, oh, then this is quite red, but it's still not red enough. It's color number 8, so this one will be harvested with the second round this week.
Because Loya only picks ripe fruit, it has a small window to get it into cold storage before it spoils.
Today the tomatoes came, we packed them in the night shift, and tomorrow morning everything goes away with the trucks.
So to help speed up production, this tomato camera.
He's looking for damage, splits.
The machine takes 2 pictures, one from the top and one from the bottom.
This one, we see, there he had found one split. Must be somewhere.
Workers still check the bigger tomatoes by hand.
We are checking for the size. It must be between 47 and 62 millimeters. If you see like this, here you missed one tomato. It's not so nice. And then you look like this. And then we say, this is nice, but these two are too small.
Robots do a lot around here. This machine on the main factory floor helps sort out tomatoes that are too small or too yellow for the premium brand.
The green one we throw away because it costs too much time, and it's older tomatoes, the taste is not so well.
Machines also sort the reddest and sweetest tomatoes one last time. Then workers package them by hand at these stations, so they're ready to ship out. But tomato greenhouses aren't the only ones relying on lots of tech. Just a few miles away, Arnaud van Dijk runs one of the largest pepper operations in the country.
De grootste uitdaging in de kassen hier is om het altijd gezond te houden. Dus het vraagt elke dag opnieuw heel veel aandacht om de natuur na te bootsen. De natuur is een heel complex iets.
Every year, VD Holland grows 85 million peppers. Like tomatoes, these peppers are grown hydroponically, meaning not in the ground. And here too, computers monitor and adjust everything from temperature and watering schedules to lighting. These yellow cards track pests like white flies or thrips.
Er zit een klein laagje lijm op. Insecten trekken naar de kleur geel. Die worden op de een of andere manier aangetrokken door de kleur geel.
And soon, cameras will be able to read the sticky cards themselves.
Dus we gaan naar de situatie toe dat we vanuit kantoor kunnen monitoren welke insecten er in de kassen aanwezig zijn. En hoe eerder wij een plaag detecteren, hoe beter en makkelijker wij deze biologisch onder controle kunnen houden.
Together, these innovations have allowed Dutch growers to achieve yields 12 times higher than the average pepper farm globally. Since 2007, the company has also used automated carts, guided by wires in the floor, to move harvested peppers from the greenhouse to the processing hall. On the packaging floor, AI-powered cameras take pictures of each pepper, comparing the images to a database of ideal fruit. That information is used to sort the peppers by size, weight, shape, and color. Ones with small imperfections don't go to waste. The company sells them to salad producers and other food processors. The ones that do pass the camera stage go on to packaging. This machine drops nearly 400 pounds of perfect peppers into each crate. More and more automatic palletizing and self-driving forklifts are replacing humans in this factory. The Netherlands is facing a growing labor crisis, with 2/3 of businesses struggling to find workers. VD Holland introduced all this new technology to automate as much of the packaging process as possible. As much as 95% of VD Holland's bell peppers are exported, and about 60% of all crops produced in the Netherlands leave the country. Its position on the North Sea makes it easy to ship from giant ports in Rotterdam and Amsterdam. Germany is the top buyer, but Dutch produce also reaches the UK, China, and the US. Producing and packing all of this food requires a lot of energy. Greenhouses across the Netherlands use nearly 107 petajoules, enough to power more than 2 million homes a year. And not everyone's happy about this. Some studies estimate that a greenhouse-grown tomato could have 6 times the carbon footprint of a field-grown one, but that largely depends on the energy source used to grow them. That's why Dutch growers are trying to change how their farms are powered. Until recently, much of their energy came from Russian gas, but the war in Ukraine forced the Netherlands to cut off imports. Energy prices soared as a result, forcing many greenhouses to look for alternatives. Loya already had its own power plant on site. Heat from the energy-producing process actually warms the greenhouse, and any extra energy is sold back to the power grid. VD Holland, meanwhile, turned to a different source.
50% van de warmtebehoefte wordt gemaakt middels aardwarmte.
The company invested $46 million, along with a few other growers, to drill for the renewable energy source.
Daarmee is ons gasverbruik gehalveerd, vlakte in de warmtevoorziening, en daar ben ik eigenlijk wel trots op.
Wageningen University is working with growers to reduce their energy consumption. Leo Marcellus is largely credited for the widespread use of LED lights in Dutch greenhouses.
Without light, there is no plant growth.
Custom LED light recipes have helped farmers grow strawberries, cucumber, and asparagus faster. His research on these lights got glasshouses in the country to cut their power usage by nearly half. And now, Leo and his team are seeing if they can take it further.
The question is, can we make as efficient use of the LED lighting as possible?
Now he's studying how LED light color, intensity, and timing can influence growth and lower energy bills.
And here we are doing this an experimental setup where we are growing lettuce with different light.
In this lettuce trial, his team figured out that by increasing the light intensity in the final week before harvest, they can raise vitamin C and sugar content and extend shelf life.
What gives a good growth? What gives a good taste? What gives a good nutritional value? But also, what is most sustainable in terms of less use of energy? And usually that can be a balancing act.
In another room, his team is working with the Singapore Food Agency on bok choy.
Here I can choose any condition. If I give them low light and a low temperature, they will grow slowly.
By adjusting temperature, CO2, and light, they can speed up plant growth. Many of these testing rooms are pink because red LED lights are better for growing plants.
Red LEDs are the most efficient in converting electricity into light. So a high fraction of red is normally, I would say, advisable.
But it has to be the perfect balance of red, blue, and white light. For example, this bok choy likes a little more white light.
If it is only red, most plants don't like that.
Leo's colleague Elena Vincenzi is studying how barely visible red light affects a tomato's plant's ability to convert light into energy.
Here you can see that there is a chamber that can be clipped on a leaf, and then because the chamber is transparent, the leaf can still receive the light that we give to our normal treatments, and we are able through the machine to actually see what is the rate of photosynthesis. If the photosynthesis rate is higher, then perhaps the plant with the same amount of light can grow more and faster.
She's also trying to reduce water use. Swapping in different kinds of growing bases for tomatoes can help with that. They're also studying how more robots can help reduce labor costs.
Several things are studied. One of them is about robotic harvesting of the plants. There's a lot of interest, of course, in replacing the manual labor by robots.
Much of what's discovered at Wageningen ends up back on farms like Loya and VD Holland.
Growers often also partly fund the research that we're doing here.
This tight feedback loop between scientists and farmers may be the secret to what makes Dutch agriculture so efficient. It dates back to the post-war era, when the Dutch government encouraged researchers and farmers to work together.
When I was a kid, my father, every Monday or Tuesday evening, I think, he had a study club. And then they were with a few growers and they visited their greenhouses. I think things like that were very positive for the development of our industry.
Now Wageningen's research is pushing innovation beyond growing plants. The Netherlands is Europe's top exporter of meat, raising 4 million cows, 13 million pigs, and 104 million chickens every year. All that livestock, especially cows for beef and dairy, comes with a high environmental cost. And it's not just carbon emissions. The bigger issue here is ammonia, a nitrogen-rich gas released from fertilizers, manure, and urine. In 2017, the Netherlands emitted more ammonia per hectare than any other European country. Why? Because it has the highest livestock density on the continent. Environmentalists say this type of pollution is stressing the native ecosystem. Excess nitrogen means tall, fast-growing grasses overtake more delicate native species, and it causes algae blooms in waterways. To cut emissions, the Dutch government started buying out high-emitting farms, but calls to limit these emissions have triggered mass protests across the country.
Het is voor ons bestaansrecht.
Ja, ik hoop dat voor te zetten, maar dan moeten de regels wel mee gaan werken, anders zal dat niet mogelijk zijn.
One place trying to find a solution is Wageningen's dairy campus.
This is not a commercial dairy farm, it's a research center.
Campus manager Kees de Koning and his team are focused on reducing nitrogen emissions from cows, starting from the ground up. They're testing floors that separate pee from poop, since mixing these two releases more ammonia.
We can run trials where we separate the urine and the solids.
The separated waste is stored in tanks under the barn to prevent emissions from escaping. They've also experimented with robot cleaners, but each one costs nearly $30,000, a steep price for most farms, which would need at least two. The more accessible solution, changing the cows' diets.
So, can we feed cows in such a way that we have less ammonia emission or less nitrogen losses?
They're testing different feed combinations with the help of AI-powered troughs, which track how much each cow eats and how much methane and ammonia it produces. They've already found that replacing fermented grass with maize or fresh grass helps cut methane emissions. And when they lower protein and nitrogen levels in the feed itself, the cows will release less ammonia. Researchers are also using AI to track cows' health. The technology can spot issues like foot rot and identify low-emission cows for breeding. The Netherlands turned its flood-prone country into an agricultural powerhouse and exported that knowledge around the world. But does Dutch innovation hold the secret to feeding the globe?
The fact is that there is almost 1 billion people on the planet that go hungry every day.
Jonas Jägermeyer is a climate scientist and crop modeler at Columbia University. He points out that half of the calories humans eat come from crops that are grown outdoors, grains like wheat, rice, and corn.
But we're not going to grow staple crops or calorie-providing grain crops in a greenhouse environment anytime soon, simply because of financial requirements. To reproduce an equal number in harvest, in caloric production, say, in a desert environment, coupled with a desalination plant that is using renewable energy, that is a sci-fi scenario that is promising, but we're not quite there yet. So to replicate those millions and millions of hectares of cornfields somewhere indoor is simply not feasible.
The farms of the future will have to rely on more than just tech. They'll need water, seeds, energy, local knowledge, and adaptable systems.
There is no silver bullet. Any implementation strategy that would help change how farmers do practice, how food is processed and transported, and how food is then brought to the consumer needs to be in a locally tailored strategy.
Jonas is now building AI tools that can give farmers early warnings of seasonal forecasts, fine-tune water use, and more importantly, connect growers across continents, allowing them to share insights in real time. Maybe the real Dutch export isn't tomatoes, beef, or robot harvesters. It's a mindset, one that values collaboration over competition and policies that drive efficiency. The Dutch can't feed the world alone, but they've forever changed the way it feeds itself.
The Netherlands is also one of the world's top dairy exporters, even as environmental rules have made it harder for farmers to maintain output.
Every wheel of Dutch cheese starts in a vat filled with millions of tiny curds.
But I'm just checking if the curd is a bit equally divided.
The Netherlands produces nearly 1 billion kilos of cheese a year. More than half of it is Gouda, or Gouda, as it's pronounced here. Frank Kaptein is a 7th-generation dairy farmer. While most cheese is made in big factories with pasteurized milk, he makes a rare kind of Gouda, using raw milk. But now, farmers fear their cheesy tradition could be at risk. The Netherlands could close hundreds of dairy farms to curb nitrogen emissions. In 2017, the tiny country emitted more per hectare than any other European nation. And about half of it comes from agriculture. Especially animals pee and poop.
Cows are not potty trained, so they poop everywhere.
These emissions threaten native forests and wildlife. But critics say the country's emissions cuts unfairly target livestock farmers.
En dan zie je dat er toch wel een gevoel van onmacht is op het erf, hè, aan de keukentafel van ja, wat kan ik doen?
So how did Dutch farmers get stuck in a decades-old climate policy? And what does this mean for the rest of the world? Frank's family has been making cheese in the town of Zoeterwoude for over 150 years. Every day, he starts by warming over 600 gallons of milk, pumped in from the milking barn.
Milk floating in now is like 37 degrees, just the body temperature of a cow.
For every batch of cheese, he adds rennet, enzymes that make the proteins in the milk clump together into solid curds, leaving behind the liquid whey.
Rennet is like a pair of scissors cutting through the milk.
After 30 minutes, a giant curd has formed.
It should break open like that. Looks good.
This machine starts cutting it into pieces.
And we cut it real small in order to have very little moisture in the cheese, in order to make a cheese which can age for years.
Frank's parents taught him how to make cheese when he was 22 years old.
My brother and I are the 7th generation Kaptein producing cheese and milking cows. And well, there will be at least 7 generations of cows walking on this farm as well.
He took over the family business with his brother in January of 2022.
I think 50% of the Dutch people has a great-grandfather who's been a farmer. Farmers shaped the landscape in the Netherlands.
In the 13th century, nearly a fifth of what is now the Netherlands was underwater. Over the centuries, the Dutch built dikes to hold back the sea. Farmers drained large portions of the reclaimed land to plant crops. But one of the only things that would grow on the wet soil was grass. So raising cattle for meat, milk, and cheese became big business. The dairy industry eventually became a symbol of the Netherlands, as much as tulips and windmills. Milk and cows graced Dutch masterpieces by Vermeer and Van Gogh. By the 20th century, the Netherlands was producing so much cheese, it was a valuable export. Today, almost all Dutch dairy farms sell their milk to big factories that pasteurize it and use machines to make cheese on a large scale. But Frank only works with raw milk. Just 4% of Dutch dairy farms make Gouda in-house like he does.
We still produce it on the way like my great-grandfather did. And I don't know if it's extra good, but I like it.
And what machines do at factories, he still prefers doing by hand, like checking the consistency of the curds himself.
No, it's just a warm way. It's like almost 30 degrees. And the curd is real soft now. And now the curd over here is just like this deep under the whey, and over there there's no curd anymore. But I'm just checking if the curd is a bit equally divided, equally spread.
He can start draining out some of that liquid whey, but nothing goes to waste. He skims the fat to make butter and feeds the whey to his pigs.
The pigs are already happy with just whey. And I like butter on my sandwich in the morning.
He slices the leftover curd into sections large enough for a wheel of cheese. He gauges the right amount by feel. Meanwhile, Frank's employee Savannah prepares the old buckets, most of which were Frank's grandfather's.
There are only a handful of farmers in the Netherlands who still use wooden buckets.
Frank drifts a cloth below the surface and piles the curds on top. The cloth will help the last bit of whey drain out. They repeat the process for 12 wheels of cheese.
There's a lot of whey in, so I think about 25-30 kilograms, something like that. And it's cozy.
These presses squeeze out the remaining liquid. All this cheese comes from the milk of Frank's 200 female cows. The Netherlands has nearly 1.6 million of them, and they produce lots of nitrogen because of what they eat. Fertilizer-grown grass in the summer and imported grain and soy year-round. Their pee is full of nitrogen too, and when it mixes with their poop, it creates a gas called ammonia. The plumes of ammonia drop down onto nature reserves and acidify the soil. Some nitrogen-loving plants like grass take over, while other native plants can't absorb proper nutrients. From there, it's a domino effect. Many native plants grow weak or die out. Snails can't get enough nutrients to build their shells. The birds that eat the snails can't develop eggs, or their chicks are born with frail bones. Inside one of the Netherlands' largest national parks, rangers like Annemieke Visser-Winterink say oak and pine trees are dying out.
They're all sick. There's not one that I would say, oh, you know, that's very, very fit or very a healthy tree. You can say that the trees are starving. It's not getting all the nutrients that it needs to be a very healthy, full-grown oak tree that it can be.
Environmentalists say 14 habitats in the country are on the brink of collapse.
The dairy sector is one of the drivers of biodiversity loss in the Netherlands.
Back in 1992, what is now the European Union adopted a law known as the Habitats Directive, requiring countries to designate nature areas for conservation. In order to comply, the Netherlands introduced policies to cut nitrogen on these protected lands. Back then, Dutch farms had one of the highest ammonia emission rates in Europe. By 2019, the industry had cut its emissions by almost 2/3. Covered manure storage, like below this slatted floor, has helped. If it stays sealed underground for enough time, the ammonia won't evaporate as much.
Everywhere we are standing, there's 2 meters deep basement full of manure and pee.
But these efforts alone weren't enough. The farms releasing the most ammonia sat near those protected nature reserves. The nation's highest court said the Netherlands needed to do more. The government scrambled to comply. Some lawmakers suggested cutting the number of animals in the country in half. Farmers were outraged. They protested for weeks, dumping manure on streets and blocking roads with tractors.
Het is voor ons bestaansrecht.
Ja, ik hoop dat voor te zetten, maar dan moeten de regels wel mee gaan werken, anders zal dat niet mogelijk zijn.
By early 2023, the government lowered the goal to a 50% cut. But by then, a pro-farmer political party named the Farmer Citizen Movement had swept provincial elections. Rick Lueders is a party leader in this area.
We have a nitrogen law which is rigid and is fully focused on dairy farming, and we want that this law is gone.
Soon after, the government announced a $1.6 billion plan to buy out and close up to 3,000 high-emitting farms near nature reserves. A farmer can voluntarily take the buyout and possibly get more than their farm is worth. But for Frank, selling his 7-generation farm isn't an option. He says his cows are like family.
This is Gina. She's the highest ranking. She's the leader of the herd. She just bosses other cows away with her head, mainly. So when she wants to drink and there's another cow, boink, move aside. I'm Gina, here I am, and I want to drink.
He even got married on this farm, surrounded by his cows. And it's tradition in his family to name cows after relatives.
And I named the cow after my daughter as well.
Frank and his brother milk the cows twice a day.
First we clean the teeth, starting at left front, right rear, and left rear. And then we connect the milking claw. There's a little bit of vacuum underneath, so it sucks the milk away.
Frank gets about 8 gallons of milk a day from each cow. What he can milk in 15 minutes would have taken his grandfather an entire day. New technology helped dairy and livestock farms consolidate, beginning in the mid-20th century.
Little farmers, cheesemakers, they quit. And the bigger ones, they grow bigger.
To this day, between 70 and 80% of the country's dairy is sent abroad, mainly to other European countries.
That's all in the region of between, let's say, London, Paris and Berlin, within an area of 800 kilometers. In the USA, you would call that a local product.
The Netherlands is also the EU's largest exporter of meat. It trades about $9 billion worth of pork, beef, and poultry internationally every year. And it does it all on land not much bigger than the US state of Maryland. For much of the world, the Netherlands became a roadmap for how to farm efficiently at scale. But environmentalists like Natasha Orlemans from the World Wildlife Fund see it differently.
I see the Netherlands as an example of where everything went wrong. Exporting the meat and dairy and having a huge amount of manure here in the Netherlands, causing all these environmental and societal problems.
The farmers we spoke to said saving the environment should go hand in hand with preserving their centuries-old traditions. Traditions like flipping the cheese.
In the first 24 hours of the cheese, we turn it like 6 times.
Flipping ensures both sides of the wheel will be round, like the curve of the bucket.
See it already turning yellow. So it's a good sign.
Then he moves the cheese wheels into a salty brine.
The salt bath is mainly for making a crust around the cheese. A little bit of salt will get deeper into the cheese for a little bit of taste.
Frank ages his specialty Gouda for up to 10 years at a consistent 59 degrees Fahrenheit.
This is one that is from 2013, so 10 years old now. And still looking shiny, still looking young.
Here he stores hundreds of wheels, over $100,000 worth of cheese.
Every day we turn them, put an extra layer of coating on top of it.
That liquid plastic coating seals in the moisture.
And of course to keep mold away. You hear it when I lift it, it gets stuck on the shell. So that's why you flip it as well.
As it ages, friendly bacteria build up amino acids, these crystals.
It's where the flavor of the cheese comes from.
Frank can tell it's aging well from the sound.
It's nice flat here. You hear it?
Frank is one of over 45,000 people working in the Dutch dairy industry.
If you just take out half of the farmers and half of the jobs and half of the income, where do these people going to work? They go to the cities probably, and the whole villages at the countryside will become ghost cities, I think.
Within 10 or 15 years, I'm worried, who's going to produce our food? And where is it coming from?
Many farmers now face a tough decision. Take the buyout, decrease their herds, move their farms, or make pricey upgrades to try to cut nitrogen emissions. But not everyone can afford costly innovations. Many farmers are working on narrow margins or are already in debt.
Farmers don't get a loan from the bank because they say, oh, we don't know if you can still farm after this due to these regulations.
Plus, farmers don't even know yet if innovations could actually save their farm from closure. Researchers at Wageningen University are hoping they can.
This is not a commercial dairy farm, it's a research center.
That's Kees de Koning. He runs the university's dairy campus. His team is testing different iterations of the slatted floor Frank has.
We can run trials where we separate the urine and the solids.
They're also studying the effect of robotic scrapers and poop vacuums. By quickly moving waste into closed storage, vacuums reduce methane and ammonia loss. But Kees estimates one like this could cost over $20,000. And a farm of 120 cows would need 2. Kees says changing cows' diets is a cheaper option.
So, can we feed cows in such a way that we have less ammonia emission or less nitrogen losses?
His team feeds the cows different combinations of food. Then they use these troughs to test how much the animals eat and their emissions.
The electronic ID system is identified, so we know exactly which cow is in the box.
So if innovations can't help, farmers still have the option of the buyout. As of November 2023, nearly 1,000 livestock farms had registered for it. Almost a quarter were dairy farms. But the government won't pay them out for a while.
It will take at least another 6 months to a year before that is finalized.
That same month, a new right-wing party, PVV, won the most seats in the country's parliamentary elections. Geert Wilders, the party's leader, spoke at farmer protests earlier in the year.
They are killing our farmers for some idiotic leftist liberal so-called nitrogen problem in the Netherlands.
The party has signaled it wants to stop government spending on initiatives to curb nitrogen, including the fund for the buyout plan. Rick hopes the PVV will form a coalition with other pro-farmer parties.
We can make new laws. It's quite simple.
But a coalition could take months. The World Wildlife Fund says this delay will only lead to further deterioration of nature. Meanwhile, farmers are in limbo.
It's the limbo that paralyzes the agricultural sector. And that limbo is very dangerous for nature as well, because it's still suffering. It's horrible, and I can feel for them.
This problem isn't unique to the Netherlands. Dairy farmers in Ireland might have to decrease the size of their herds because of unsafe nitrogen levels in rivers, which are causing algae blooms. New Zealand has some of the most polluted waterways in the world. Dairy farming is one of the biggest sources of these dangerous nitrate levels in drinking water. And in the U.S. state of California, agriculture has contributed to hazardous air pollution. All of these countries will have to contend with the same questions the Netherlands faces today. How do we feed ourselves, preserve tradition, keep economies running, and protect our planet?
I don't see myself as being opposing to farmers. I'm opposed to the system the way it is now. It's ecologically a disaster, and it's also not bringing farmers a proper income. So basically it's a system that's being broken, and that system needs to be fixed.
Frank seems open to a fix too.
If it helps nature or climate, bring it on.
Maybe then his family can continue making cheese for another 7 generations.
I hope that dairy farmers have a future in the Netherlands. I think we're really connected to the landscape. I hope farms won't grow too big, so it can be run on a family scale. I think that's a beautiful way of living.
In 2024, Mexican avocado exports reached a record of over $3 billion. In parts of Michoacán, where cartels extort growers, some farmers have joined armed self-defense groups to protect their communities and their crops.
Avocado has become one of the world's trendiest foods. As the poster child of millennial healthy eating, this superfood is now a mainstay for foodies everywhere. But have you noticed your avo on toast is costing more and more? Avocado prices have rocketed in recent years by up to 129%, with the average national price of a single Hass avocado reaching $2.10 in 2019, almost doubling in just 1 year. So why are avocados so expensive? Archaeologists in Peru have found domesticated avocado seeds buried with Incan mummies dating back to 750 BC. But it was the Aztecs in 500 BC who named it aguacatl, which translates to testicle. When Spanish conquistadors swept through Mexico and Central America in the 16th century, they renamed it aguacate. The farming of aguacate developed over the next few hundred years, predominantly in Central America and South America, but consumption of the alligator pear outside of these regions before the late 19th century was almost non-existent. The commercialization of aguacate began in the early 1900s, but was focused on branding avocados as a delicacy for the wealthy, like this advert in the New Yorker from 1920, which declared them as the aristocrat of salad fruit. But a selection of Californian growers realized that the hard-to-pronounce aguacate was off-putting for the mass market, so they formed the California Avocado Association. By the 1950s, production scale grew and avocado prices fell to about 25 cents each. Popularity increased further with the wave of inter-American immigration in the 60s, as Latin Americans brought their love of avocados with them to the US. But as demand increased, supply had to keep up, and the true difficulties of yielding large-scale avocado crops began to show. Avocado orchards require an extraordinary amount of costly resources in order to flourish.
There are multiple inputs that avocados require, whether it's water, fertilizer, pruning, pest control, the sunburn protection of trees. All those go into making your chances better of having a very good quality crop. When we decide to plant an avocado orchard, we'll plant trees that come from certified nurseries. We have to place our orders years in advance. On average, if we're producing 100,000 pounds per acre, that takes about 1 million gallons of water, so 100 gallons per pound. So it'd be about 50 gallons per 8-ounce fruit. But that's dependent on what Mother Nature will throw at you. You know, we have wind, we have intense sun. It's really hard for a grower to manage the unmanageable things that will affect a crop.
The surge in popularity of avocados stalled during the fat-fighting frenzy of the 1980s, with an average of only 1 pound per capita being consumed in America by 1989. The decade's low-fat obsession drove consumers away from avocado because of its high fat content, without really understanding the nutritional truth hidden within.
When it comes to fat in food in general, people tend to get a little bit concerned because we often hear in the media that fat isn't good for us. But the type of fat that's in avocados is monounsaturated fat, which is actually often deemed healthy fat or heart healthy fat. So while there is a lot of fat in avocados, it's actually quite good fat.
Avocado started its meteoric comeback at the turn of the millennium, and it was helped by an unlikely political decision. In 2005, the US Department of Agriculture lifted a 90-year-old ban to allow the importation of Mexican avocados to all 50 states. Initially, this decision angered Californian growers, who feared the move could slash local growers' sales by as much as 20%.
What actually transpired and took place was as that Mexican supply became much more prevalent and available, retailers got behind marketing and selling avocados. Food service providers, restaurants started putting it as permanent parts of their menus. And demand started to boom because the inconsistent supply chains before were now consistent, and consumers were allowed to enjoy avocados every day of the year.
The biggest day of the avocado calendar became Super Bowl Sunday, when it's now estimated that almost 200 million pounds of avocados are eaten during the big game in America. But if you take a moment to consider the resources needed to produce that amount, you can start to understand avocados' elevated prices. According to experts, it takes roughly 270 litres of water to grow a pound of avocados. So 200 million pounds could require as much as 54 billion litres of water, which means droughts or heat waves can have devastating consequences on the avocado industry. In fact, that's exactly what's been happening in California for the last 7 years, with the Sunshine State only recently being declared drought-free in 2019, which goes a long way to explaining record avocado prices. In some countries, like Chile, avocado cultivation is being blamed for exacerbating droughts, as lush green orchards overlook dry riverbeds. Perhaps the biggest reason for avocados' rise to dominance is the emergence of the clean eating lifestyle. No longer just a chip dip for special occasions, this superfood can be found in a plethora of recipes in cafes and restaurants everywhere around the world. And those who are eating them are really keen for you to know about it. Just type #avocado into Instagram, and you'll be hit with over 10 million search results. But is the glorification of avocado justified?
There's quite a big hype around avocados, but it actually is quite justified when it comes to how nutrient dense this food is. There's not many foods that actually replicate it in terms of a nutritional profile. When it comes to calling something a superfood, I'm not really for that label. Avocados are definitely a good food to include in your diet, but like I said, you're not really missing out if you don't like them or if you can't eat them for any reason. Monounsaturated fats, we can find that in things like olive oil and olive, nuts and seeds, vitamins and minerals. We can find that in other green vegetables, so spinach and broccoli and things like that. So there's ways of getting those nutrients in without having avocado.
All of this produce requires an astonishing amount of labour. Even once grown, pruned and picked, avocados need costly distribution methods in order to be delivered fresh and ripe to far-flung corners of the world.
If you're living in Philadelphia, right, you want to buy a ripe avocado in Philadelphia. What they do is they ship green avocados from California to Philadelphia. They send them to the ripening center. They warm them up and get ethylene in them so they all ripen. And then when they're moved out to the retail stores, you're actually buying something that's almost ready to eat or ready to eat. Because if you were to buy a green avocado that's shipped straight from California to your market, you would have to ripen it yourself over 7 to 10 day period. And most consumers are a little more anxious for their avocado toast than waiting 10 days.
With prices so high, the commodity of avocados has attracted a spate of thefts from orchards and delivery trucks worldwide. In New Zealand, armed night patrols and electric fences have been introduced after a grower in Northland had 70% of his orchard stolen. There's even further grim reading for avocado lovers. In Michoacan, where 80% of Mexico's avocados originate, cartels run a so-called blood avocado trade, violently enforcing a non-negotiable extortion fee from farmers based on the size of their land and the weight of their crop. Some restaurants have begun an avocado boycott as we all weigh up the ethics behind our eating habits. Experts suggest that water shortages could affect 5 billion people by 2050, and rainfall in the so-called drought belt, which includes Mexico and South America, is predicted to decline. But whilst evidence of environmental degradation is mounting, the avocado industry is still growing, along with consumer demand. In certain places, the sustainability of avocado production will become untenable.
Italy exports over $3 billion of leather every year. Some of the most expensive leather is made through a process called vegetable tanning, which dates back thousands of years. Craftspeople in Tuscany keep the tradition alive today.
This is said to be the world's oldest leather-making tradition. It's called vegetable tanning, and it's a process that has been perfected over generations here in Tuscany. Artisans spend 4 to 6 weeks perfecting each piece that they touch. Vegetable tanned leather is considered higher quality and will last longer than synthetically treated leather. It takes at least 28 times longer to make, which is part of the reason why vegetable tanned leather only makes up roughly 10% of all leather available today. It can also cost around 3 times more than the cheaper version. So how exactly is vegetable tanned leather made? And why is it so expensive? Vegetable tanning is said to date back to roughly 6000 BCE, when people living in early civilizations sought a way to make animal skins resistant to weather and decay. Genuine vegetable tanned leather uses these natural tanning agents from sources like quebracho, chestnut, or mimosa trees. The substances, known as tannins, will naturally bind to the collagen proteins in a hide, turning it into leather as we know it. Just as they do for trees, the tannins protect hides being turned into leather from bacteria and other substances, which gives leather the longevity and versatility that it's known for. Until the 19th century, vegetable tanning was the only way to make leather. But today, 90% of all leather goods are made using chrome or mineral tanning, a leather-making process that uses synthetic tannins. On first glance, consumers may think this softer leather is of higher quality, but it won't have the same lifespan. When the hides arrive at the tannery, they soak in water for 24 hours to remove the salt that kept them preserved on their journey.
La materia prima utilizzata è fondamentalmente la pelle bovina, quindi un recupero del mondo della produzione della carne per l'alimentazione umana. Sono pelli che arrivano, possono arrivare da tutto il mondo, principalmente arrivano dall'Europa per il nostro settore.
Then they are dehaired and limed, a process that prepares the skins to receive the tanning substances. Leather makers add the hides, along with the tannins, to this large wooden rotating vessel known as a drum. The hides stay here for 3 to 7 weeks to tan. Here's where you can begin to see the differences between vegetable tanned leather and its modern-day alternative, chrome tanning, where hides sit in a drum with water and synthetic extracts for only a single day. Just this difference in production time adds to the price of vegetable tanned leather. Once the hides have been removed from the drums, skilled artisans inspect each piece. Depending on the final product, the leather can be retanned, dyed, or greased. This process is known as fat liquoring. These 3 procedures can be done to adjust the elasticity, softness, or color of the leather. Whether they happen depends on the vision of the artisan.
Dopo la fase dell'ingrasso appunto si procede ad asciugare la pelle e una volta asciutta abbiamo la pelle che è prodotta. Da lì poi si può andare con tutta una serie di passaggi meccanici, si può andare ad affinare la caratteristica che appunto il conciatore vuol dare al suo articolo.
The tanned hides dry on hooks for several days in a special environment-controlled room. The humidity and temperature in the room have to be just right. This is something that can't be learned quickly and shows the skill of these leather makers. The time of the year, the weather, and the humidity in the factory itself can all play a part in adjusting for this perfect temperature. If any hide is over-dried, it must be taken back to the drums and reconditioned. You can tell vegetable tanned leather apart from mineral tanned leather by its two defining qualities. First, it changes color in the light and develops a rich patina. A patina is the shine that develops over time on a leather product that makes it unique. Second, vegetable tanned leather will become more supple with age. These qualities are made possible by the natural properties of the leather. Vegetable tanning leaves the hides in an organic state that lets them age like skin. With synthetically treated leather, each piece is the same. That's by design. Leather produced with vegetable tanning, however, will garner the most beautiful patina as it is worn or used. No two pieces will age the same. After it's dry, the hide goes to the staking machine, where small hammers repeatedly pound the leather to make it softer. Sometimes the leather mills for several hours in a dry drum, giving it a special natural grain. In the end, the leather is trimmed, measured, and packaged. Finished products are valued for their variations, which can add to the price. Artisans take pride in the natural markings and differences that prove the leather's authenticity.
Parliamo di una piccola nicchia di mercato che è una particolarità unica. C'è sempre stato il detto l'acqua va in amore. Va in amore, l'acqua cambiava nella falda. Quando cambia l'acqua nella falda dovevamo compensare cambiando la ricetta e questo chi lo diceva? Nessuno, lo diceva l'esperienza accumulata in anni, secoli di conciature. Queste sono delle differenze chiaramente macroscopiche.
All vegetable tanned leather from Tuscany must meet a set of specific standards for the consortium to verify it as authentic. Tanneries must use all natural, raw materials and ensure that no animal is killed for its skin. And in the end, the most important mission of vegetable tanneries in Tuscany is to keep a cultural craft alive, no matter the cost.
È un po' come la cucina toscana, la ribollita ognuno ha la sua ricetta e così le concerie, gli artigiani come siamo noi, ognuno ha proprio la sua ricetta, che viene poi tramandata anche.
California supplies more than half of the world's pistachios, but drought and water shortages have made it harder for farmers to keep their trees producing.
California grows 99% of America's pistachios, even though the crop isn't native. This year, U.S. farmers expect another record harvest, and they're racing to keep up with new demand, fueled by the Dubai chocolate craze. But trying to supply all these nuts is getting harder than ever, because pistachio trees need a lot of water, about twice as much a year as tomatoes, one of the state's other top food crops.
California doesn't just produce the majority of the nut crop. California produces the majority of the fresh fruits and vegetables in the country. They're not being prioritized right now.
And as droughts get worse, the state is tightening its water supply, threatening farms and businesses.
As a smaller grower, my mindset needs to be on how we can survive.
We visited the world's largest producer to learn how, despite the challenges, they've managed to keep expanding, with orchards that could blanket Manhattan 4 times over.
Because we planned ahead. After a while, you get pretty good at it because it's not if a weather event will happen, it's when the weather event happens.
So how did farmers build a multi-billion-dollar pistachio industry in some of America's driest counties? And as water supplies grow even scarcer, which crops will survive? Pistachios aren't native to California. Their origins can be traced back to Central Asia and the Middle East, where people have eaten them for millennia. The region has a climate similar to California's, with mostly dry summers. These plants have always been picky, so big harvests were hard to cultivate, even in their native land. Pistachios were regarded as a luxury, mentioned in the Bible as one of the choice fruits of the land. Around 330 BC, Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire and brought the nut to the Mediterranean. Pistachio farms began popping up in Italy and Spain, and by the 1800s in France. A seed distributor named Charles Mason brought the first pistachio nuts to California in 1854. In the years that followed, many tried to cultivate trees here, but they didn't take well to California soil and barely produced nuts. However, the US Department of Agriculture liked that pistachio trees could survive droughts. So in 1929, it sent its botanist to Iran to find more productive seeds. He brought back thousands, and eventually one thrived. He named it Gedman after the Persian province it came from. Over the next century, an entire industry grew in California from that single Iranian seed. Today, some of the oldest pistachio trees in the state can be found at Keenan Farms. They were planted before 1972.
The industry was almost literally non-existent.
Bob Keenan and his father Charles started farming pistachios on just 100 acres. Nowadays, the family gathers nuts from 20,000 acres.
My father and I would laugh, going, can you imagine we'd ever be something like that?
To grow this many nuts, they need fast machines. Like these, that can shake off as many as 15,000 pistachios in just 5 seconds. Only trees with long, healthy roots can withstand the force.
They're so big that sometimes it's even hard to shake them because they're just such a large trunk. It takes so much force and energy.
Zach Raven oversees the harvest.
That kind of just tells you they're ready right there when the hole we call slips right off.
It takes about 7 trees to fill one bin. The goal is to process 130 of these trailers by the end of the day. And this goes on for 8 weeks. Pistachios are one of the most expensive nuts to grow. Farmers can spend about $20,000 per acre before a single pistachio is produced.
You're putting so much investment in watering it, giving it nutrition, pruning it. It's a risk. It's a gamble for all growers.
And it takes 6 years for these trees to produce nuts, twice as long as almonds.
That's a long time with not getting anything in return as a grower.
Unlike other nuts, which produce both male and female flowers in a single tree, pistachio plants have just one or the other. Only the females produce the nuts. The crop needs plenty of water during the summer to yield a big harvest. 1 acre takes more than 1 million gallons of water. That's enough to supply 10 households for a year.
It's always about timing when it comes to these trees, giving the right amount of water at the right time.
Throwing off this balance can leave up to half the pistachio shells empty.
A lot of them are blanks, and there's a blank right there.
Keenan's first commercial harvest in 1976 was just 500 pounds. Today, the company produces millions, more than the entire state's first industrial harvest in the mid-70s. Back then, Iran still dominated the industry, exporting 20 million pounds of pistachios a year to the US. But things started to change after 1979.
Several hundred Iranian students seized and occupied the American embassy in Tehran.
They held 52 American workers and diplomats hostage in what's known as the Iranian hostage crisis. In response, the US restricted imports on Iranian pistachios. That opened up a market for California growers.
A lot of like-minded farmers invested their time and energy and resources into building an industry. Day by day, year by year, we learned a little bit about the processing, which was new to California.
In 1980, the state grew 27 million pounds of the nut. But a year later, Iran released the American hostages, and the US lifted its embargo on the country's pistachios. Iran started shipping nuts to the US again.
We couldn't face those types of competition, so we had our lobbyists and lawyers do some work.
Keenan Farms and a few other growers petitioned the government to launch an investigation into Iranian imports. The US International Trade Commission found Iran was selling pistachios for less than they were really worth, even cheaper than it cost to grow them. It's a strategy known as dumping, pricing goods below cost to squeeze out rivals and gain market share. In 1986, the US slapped a 241% tax on pistachios from Iran, a tax that holds to this day.
And that helped our industry grow and become profitable.
By then, the Keenans already had their first machine, designed specifically for pistachios, called a huller. At the time, they hand-fed it. Today, it's automated. Water softens the skins so they come off without damaging the shells. Once they're dry, Keenan stores the pistachios in these silos. The big ones each hold up to 2 million pounds worth.
These windows gives you an idea of how full they are. Hear that good solid sound? Solid pistachios. Yeah, it's nuts.
And all those nuts have to get processed. That's where Bob's son, Mitchell Keenan, takes over.
Morning. We can store about 10 million pounds inside this total warehouse here. How many individual pistachios? Oh my God. 25 times 16, so that was 2 million. Maybe 4 billion nuts, somewhere around there. It's a lot of pistachios.
First, computers scan for rotten pistachios.
So we're trying to look for any kind of sticks or rocks that might have made it into the product. No consumer wants to have insects in their product.
The sorted nuts go for a ride through these tubes, which move them to their next station.
It's basically a replacement for a conveyor belt. Kind of the modern way of transporting nuts now.
Next, they are sorted by color into 5 different chutes. Then, these workers go through the pistachios again to look for defects. If the nuts make the cut, they'll go here to get sized.
Pistachios range from, really tiny pistachios to big stuff. The average consumer wants an average sized pistachio.
The smaller nuts, as well as the closed and dark ones, are sent to the sheller.
This is where the closed shells turn into kernels.
But they have to sort these kernels too, and that's trickier.
A lot of the defects can blend in, like right here. That's called spotting, so that's a defect right there.
About 60% of Keenan's business comes from outside the US.
This product's going to India. So they're going to take the product and they'll actually roast it there.
The company packs and ships about 25,000 boxes on an average day.
It's crunch time right now.
40 miles south, the world's largest pistachio grower, the Wonderful Company, farms the nut on 60,000 acres, an area about twice the size of San Francisco.
I am out here generally a couple times a week.
Rob Raceborough runs Wonderful Orchards for its owners, the Beverly Hills billionaires Stuart and Linda Resnick.
I started out as the Resnick's banker, and so I financed their first purchase of a pistachio orchard in 1986. Stuart said, well, this is a fantastic product, but the U.S. consumer is unaware of its health benefits, and so he took it upon himself to introduce consumers to a new product. At that time, I certainly didn't, and I doubt the Resnicks ever thought that they would become the largest pistachio grower in the world.
In the early 90s, California's entire pistachio harvest grew on just 50,000 acres, smaller than Wonderful's orchards today. By then, the Resnicks had reportedly captured about half the state's pistachio market.
Some trees produced many more than 13,000 nuts, and some trees didn't produce as many. So they said, let's see if we can identify these trees that produce so much better than the rest. We can clone those trees. Then about 10 years ago, we had successfully perfected the process to replicate those trees and to grow those. And we started planting those in a big way.
Today, Rob says Wonderful's trees produce 20 to 40% more nuts than the average pistachio tree, using the same amount of water. Now, the company handles about 800 million pounds of the nut per year. That's more than 500 times California's first industrial harvest. Rob says they don't leave it up to chance.
This is California. There's going to be periods of drought. Let's plan ahead. But let's make sure we have the water.
Early farmers in Southern California soon discovered that the soil quickly dries to dust during dry spells.
For hundreds of years, farmers in the arid South looked for ways to water their crops.
In California, the fundamental water problem or puzzle is that most of our water is in the north of the state, and most of the demand is in the south.
So in the 1950s, the state pitched a massive new water delivery system called the State Water Project, which would pull water from Northern California. But districts could only access this new system if they paid the state back for construction. Voters approved the project in the 1960s, and California began building. With hopes of more water coming their way, farmers began planting more crops, including what are called perennials, like pistachio trees, that don't need to be planted annually. They can survive droughts, but to produce a harvest that's profitable, they need a lot of water.
Otherwise, that loss is, millions of dollars, depending on the size of your ranch. We have to keep watering them. We can't stop because the financial outcome would be just too huge.
But farmers soon learned the state had been overly optimistic, estimating that the project could deliver up to 4.2 million acre-feet of water per year, when it would eventually supply much less than that. The state couldn't build every canal it had originally planned, and other regions already had contracts to pull from the same rivers.
We also have water rights holders that have obtained their water right before 1914, when we actually started keeping track of it, meaning they will take their share out first.
New environmental rules enacted in the 1970s and recurring dry spells also limited how much water the state could transport south toward farms. That was an issue for places like Kern County, where millions of nut trees were maturing in the early 90s and needed water.
With the expansion of perennial tree crops, we've created this problem that we're up against.
Then, one of the longest droughts in California's history, from 1987 to 1992, made the problem even worse.
Water shortages resulted in a cut of up to 50% to agriculture.
In the early 90s, the state stopped water deliveries to Wonderful, which relied entirely on that supply for about half its crops. Many growers in the area turned to the aquifers to keep their trees producing.
The aquifers exist in layers, right? So you can think like shallow, medium, deep. Once the shallow is overpumped, the farmers with resources go down. So the other major impact of overpumping is that domestic wells that serve people's homes and local businesses, and they run dry, right? And then you're talking about people with no access to water. That's been a huge issue.
But even farms, including Wonderful's, couldn't pump what they needed because groundwater supplies were low in large parts of Kern County. That's where California was exploring a new water bank that would capture excess rainwater from across the state and store it underground. But the project stalled for years. They eventually found a path forward. A new entity called the Kern Water Bank Authority would take control. It was made up of local water districts, agencies, and a private company owned by the Resnicks, who gained about 57% control. According to Wonderful, it earned this share by paying off part of the $50 million it says was still needed to get the bank running, and by giving up some of its water deliveries, which the company says would be worth over $170 million today.
In the 90s, very few people wanted to give up entitlement to take this risk on an unproven concept of banking water. Stuart Resnick said, okay, I'll take a chance.
The investment paid off fast. The company, whose pistachio crop was about 250 times the size of most growers, now had access to a system that could store billions of gallons of water in rainy years. And as luck would have it, in the mid-90s, California logged some of its wettest years on record.
We've always said, let's not max this out. Let's always make sure we have enough resources that we can be sustainable when dry periods come.
Many still object to Wonderful's outsized share, because court documents indicate that the state had already invested around $74 million to develop the bank, partly using residents' water bills. And now, the main stakeholder is a private company.
It's public water that we've paid for that in times of plenty should be stored for the public, for the people.
There are players in the system that have a disproportionate level of power. The Resnicks are not the only such private interests involved, but they happen to be the largest ones.
That's stirred up a century-long debate. Should water rights be privately controlled?
Do you think it's ethical? I think it's important that people always have water.
There's been a lot of misinformation about the Kern Bank, especially during state emergencies.
With regard to the wildfires in LA earlier this year, for example, LA gets its water from a completely different source, but it has absolutely no connection to the water that the Wonderful company owns or controls in Kern County.
That's because there's no direct infrastructure to quickly move the water from the Kern Bank to where firefighters needed it. But the Department of Water Resources did clarify that the Kern Bank does help supplement state water deliveries to many public entities during periods of drought. Meanwhile, environmentalists say focusing only on the Resnicks misses a much bigger point about the state's water management.
As the State Water Project shows, if they promise water that doesn't exist and have us try to pay for it, the environment's getting trashed and the wrong kind of crops are being grown and there's no water for it.
The Department of Water Resources told us its water project was designed with the best data available in the 50s and 60s. It also said that even though deliveries will likely keep shrinking, the state is working on new infrastructure to keep water flowing as droughts get worse. Still, in the rat race for more water, small farmers are suffering. Rebecca Kasser has watched her family's land dry out. She helps run Avalor Moor Farms in the Central Valley. Just 9 years ago, her land was filled with pistachio and almond trees.
We were 100% planted out, meaning that all of our acreage had something growing on it.
But her district has younger water rights, so when there's a drought, growers here are among the first to see cuts. Farmers used to be able to pump enough groundwater to keep their trees producing during droughts. But in 2014, California passed a law called the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, which barred growers from pumping more groundwater than natural sources like rainfall could replenish. In some districts, each piece of land was assigned a set number of water credits. But that often wasn't enough for thirsty crops. So to keep their trees producing, farmers left some fields unplanted, a process called fallowing.
We fallowed out over 60% of our farm so that we'd be able to have the water in order to irrigate our plantings.
To save their pistachios, Some farmers were forced to buy more land just to collect extra water credits and left the new fields unplanted.
So we started picking up more fallow acreage, 20 acres here, 20 acres there.
Ultimately, Sigma could take about 900,000 acres out of production in California's main crop-growing region by 2040. That's roughly 20% of the irrigated farmland in the San Joaquin Valley. Reports project that much of the remaining cropland could go to nut plantations, like pistachios, with acreage expected to grow by about 40% between 2023 and 2031.
The folks that have the water are using it on their high-value tree crops to the detriment of other things.
California doesn't just produce, the majority of the nut crop. California produces the majority of the fresh fruits and vegetables in the country. And if the ability to do that gets impacted, you're going to start to see price shocks.
As for which crops take the biggest hit,
is very much a function of whether any of the farmers have more or less access to whatever surface water is available.
And Wonderful has that advantage because of the bank.
The best thing about the water bank is it doesn't use groundwater. It uses stored surface water. It's a tool that you can use to manage through droughts.
Wonderful has shifted some pomegranate and almond acreage too, helping to double plantings of its top crop over the past decade.
And part of that is because of how we view the market and our leadership position in the pistachio industry and what kind of competitive advantage we have.
We could brand every one of our wonderfully delicious pistachios with the word wonderful on them, or we could just write it once.
My mission is to get the world to eat more pistachios.
Diana Salsa helps run marketing for Wonderful. The team led the company's 2009 Get Crackin' campaign, featuring new packaging.
More people were aware that pistachios now came in this iconic black bag. Before that, pistachios were really sold in bulk.
Within just a few months of the launch, Wonderful's sales surged more than 220%.
Is that honey?
We invest millions of dollars consistently to make the whole world aware of pistachios.
By 2016, the US was dominating the global supply, outpacing Iran, and has remained the top producer ever since.
The Resnicks have invested over $1 billion to be able to handle the demand as our supply and trees continue to grow.
In America alone, Wonderful Pistachios was retailing $1 billion worth of nuts annually by 2020. 3 years later, the Dubai chocolate trend boosted demand fast. And has already driven pistachio kernel prices up nearly 35% between 2024 and 2025. And this year, California growers are expecting their biggest harvest ever. Experts now project the pistachio market will grow from about $5.6 billion in 2025 to over $7 billion by 2030. The US supplies more than 60% of the world's pistachios. And until this year, China was largely the top buyer. But they've imposed tariffs on American nuts, making them more expensive. As a result, imports dropped by over 50% in the last year. That's opening a door for Iran to take some of the Chinese market from the US. The country has remained a big player, supplying about 16% of the world's pistachios, mostly to China, Turkey, India, and the UAE. Only a tiny share of Iran's pistachios ever make it to the US. Each year, New York City restaurateur Nassim Ali Khani brings back a single bag for herself from her trips home to Iran.
I was in Iran in February, and I just brought this with me. They're meatier, lighter. Clearly see a difference between these and what we have here in this country.
She runs Sofre, a Persian restaurant that highlights ingredients from her homeland.
Pistachios hold a quite special place in my heart, as well as Iranians.
she made us a few sample items from her menu.
From very early on, I realized pistachios are a real treasure and they should be acknowledged as such. See this? This is nice. We use them in this very elegant shape. Look how tiny they have been sliced.
She reserves that single bag of Iranian pistachios for one cookie on the menu.
They are so delicate that we use them as a garnishes for really special dishes.
But sanctions have made Iranian pistachios hard to find in America and much more expensive. So she rarely cooks with them.
It would be exuberant in terms of the cost.
She says prices have soared in Iran too, as tensions escalated with Israel this year, disrupting supply chains. Extreme weather has also made it hard to keep the conditions just right for pistachios. So they've become even more precious and expensive.
Right now, many people can't afford it. By just being eliminated from our sphere of our eating habit, then it becomes part of the culture being eliminated in the long run.
Preserving those authentic Persian flavors matters deeply to Nassim, and it's what keeps her regulars coming back.
When I think of Persian food, I think about pistachios. There's a really special connection that I want to pass on to my daughter, and coming here is such a wonderful way to share a part of my culture with her. I think we didn't have access to Persian ingredients. We lose out on the things that make food rich, the things that make food zesty.
I live for pistachios. I'm Syrian. I was born in Syria, and they're very big on pistachios. It's a very nostalgic food.
The restaurant's most popular dessert, saffron ice cream, is made with California pistachios. But Nassim still uses them sparingly, acutely aware of the true cost of this nut.
It's been a pattern in this country that we get somebody else's seeds and we grow it and we make it bigger. I'm sure that somebody's suffering. Maybe a small farmer is suffering. Maybe land is suffering. Something is not right because these pistachios are kind of inexpensive for what they should be.
Back in California, Keenan Farms is still trying to keep some of the oldest groves productive.
This is one of the original plantings in California, and she's still producing. It's kind of neat. It's kind of like you're in a museum, you know? You're part of something that started many, many years ago.
The Keenans say they would have never predicted back then how hard it would eventually be to keep these trees producing.
Consistency of supply, that's where California has thrived. It has grown its production to meet the needs of all the countries around the world. And that creates the demand even against competitors such as Iran.
But that demand means farmers need to keep up, no matter how challenging that may be.
So as a smaller farm, we've had to be really innovative and resilient with regards to the water issues that we're dealing with. We want to do right by the soil and we want to take care of the resources. We've been in this game for a while and it's our passion and our legacy. In order to stay relevant, we're just going to have to continue to be creative.
Despite being smaller than several US states, Switzerland leads the world in luxury watch exports. Some models, like rare Rolexes, are so hard to get new that they've helped fuel a booming resale market worth more than $20 billion.
Identifying a fake Rolex can be tricky.
You know, as a person who has been dealing with these things for years, when it doesn't say Swiss, you know something's wrong.
John Buckley is a veteran watch dealer who buys, sells, and repairs used Rolexes. And they're sometimes worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It's just perfectly done.
These days, used watches can sell for up to 3 times their retail price. The market is estimated to be worth $20 billion, and it's growing fast.
It's like everybody started buying watches.
Because they're a good way to store money.
Between 2011 and 2021, Rolex has outperformed the stock market, real estate, and gold.
But even experienced sellers like John have to be careful. For one, there are counterfeits. U.S. Customs showed us how it seizes up to 150,000 fake watches per year.
Rolex watches, inside in just plain old bubble wrap. And Rolex would never put their watches in little Ziploc bags.
But spotting a fake isn't always as obvious. If dealers like John get stuck with a counterfeit, the effects can be disastrous. Not just financially, but it can also destroy the reputation.
New young bucks that come into the business, they get caught out there real fast. And your reputation is burned when you can't make good on a sale.
Factory bezel, factory dial.
We followed John through Manhattan's famous Diamond District to see how he strikes deals in such a competitive market.
It's 13.3.
No, it's not so bad.
Of course it's not so bad. Why do you think I'm offering it to you?
This section of 47th Street is home to over 2,600 businesses selling gems, jewelry, and luxury watches. John buys and sells roughly a dozen watches per week here from stores and other collectors. Today, he's visiting two of his regular spots.
Little Eddie's got a Patek that I need. Hopefully I could buy it from him, and I'm going to show him a couple of pieces that I've got.
I got to find it first.
Oh, that's good.
What's good about this watch, it comes fully complete. Look at the condition.
You got everything?
Yeah.
John already has a customer lined up for this rare Patek Philippe.
I really like this watch for
What's
myself.
the date on the papers? I'm curious. Not that it matters.
He's hoping to get it for under $40,000.
Listen, I know it's a nice watch. I'm not here to beat you up. You know I need it. 36,000? I thought I was pretty good at 35.
37,000, that's my final price. I think it's fair. You can think about it.
I don't have to think. Mazal.
No problem.
You're the man. Thank you. This watch will be sold for 40,000 and change. So I'll make $3,000 on the watch, which is not bad.
Down the street, John has his eye on a gold Rolex day date with diamonds on the bezel or the ring surrounding its glass.
How much is this $21,000 watch?
25,000. Yes.
2, 3, 5. You like that, right? Let's do it. It's factory diamond dial, factory diamond bezel.
23.5. The deal, what I'm gonna do for you, I'm gonna obviously say yes, but.
Really? It's beautiful.
John typically has around 30 watches in his collection, and most already have buyers lined up.
We like cash flow. I write a check, I want to know that, I'm going to have that money back, I'll make my profit on it, and move on to the next one. It's like the holy grail over here. I didn't even think they were still producing them.
He doesn't want to risk getting stuck with something he might not sell, even if he loves it, like this diamond-studded Rolex from Qatar, which has an asking price of $175,000.
When you look at these that they make on the street and you compare it to something like this, I mean, it's a different world. I don't have a home for it.
Despite the high price tags, John says he rarely makes more than a few $1,000s per watch. Sometimes it's only a few hundred.
There are very few home runs in this game. I mean, I don't know what is considered a home run. Making 10 grand on a watch, it's like that doesn't happen. Thank you, Yasha Mazal. And thank you. Thank you so much.
In fact, he makes even more money selling obscure parts than the actual watches.
These are interesting. These are called color change or tropical. And years ago, guys would never keep this stuff. But now, because they're unique, they keep them and they ask for a lot of money for them. These are Daytona dials, which are actually pretty cool. This is just tons of stuff, wallets, Rolex, duffel bags and hats. We have it all. We do.
He's hoarded these Rolex parts in his workshop for 25 years.
We're here in the lab. This is where I get to practice my guerrilla watchmaking skills. You have to have a very specific part for a very specific watch in order for it to command a very high price.
John has seen demand for Rolex parts and watches skyrocket after 2017. That's when a Rolex Daytona worn by the actor Paul Newman broke a record, selling for $15.5 million plus fees.
Selling officially at $15,500,000. Thank you for your patience, Natalie. It is history now. $15,500,000.
What happened after that was this big bull run, and I hate to use stock terminology, but that's what it was. It's like everybody started buying watches.
In 2021, Rolex retail sales were estimated to be higher than the next 5 brands combined. So why are they in such high demand? First off, their reputation for quality. They're made by hand with materials like 18-karat gold, platinum, and stainless steel. And there aren't many new ones entering the market.
Brands like Patek Philippe and Audemars Piguet each make fewer than 100,000 watches per year.
Rolex makes an estimated 1 million annually. And that's still not enough to keep up with demand.
For most people, the only way to get one is to get one secondhand. The result of that, in many cases, is higher demand than available supply, which causes prices to go up.
Rolexes also last and can resist all kinds of extreme conditions. In fact, it started off as a sports brand back in the early 20th century.
They began making highly functional timepieces designed to go underwater, top of mountains, and on jet planes. And these were professional grade timepieces for people that needed accurate measurement.
These were not collectible watches back in the day, okay? You look at some of these, watches that are 6- and 7-figure watches, they sold for maybe $100 at a military PX or something like that.
Edmund Hillary, one of the first to summit Everest, wore a Rolex Oyster Perpetual during his expedition in 1953. In the 60s, Rolex began sponsoring tennis matches, auto races, and a number of high-end luxury events. Rolexes also started showing up a lot more on movie screens.
Actor Sean Connery wore one as James Bond. Marlon Brando wore one too.
By the 1980s, Rolexes were sought-after collectibles. Today, a Rolex Daytona model is so popular, it's almost impossible to get on a waiting list.
I'm still on a waiting list since 1996, just to give you an idea.
But buyers are willing to spend a lot to skip the line, which is why used Rolexes can sell for 2 to 3 times their retail cost. And as demand soars, watch dealers like John have to be even warier of the biggest trap of the trade: counterfeits. Customs Officer Steve Nethersall showed us how they sniff out and seize counterfeit watches at JFK Airport.
Before a package ever lands in the U.S., CBP gathers intelligence on the sender, container, and aircraft. He'll start by looking at the box.
Well, I'm looking because I don't have my glasses on, so I'm cheating. The first, when it comes in, is the country of origin. Louis Vuitton, they're coming from France. The watch is coming from Switzerland. When it's coming from China, bing, that's your #1 red flag. Rolex would never put their watches in little Ziploc bags. They don't put these inside it, the silica gel. Rolex does not send to individuals in the United States. They only send to their retail stores. More than 90% of all the goods that we receive that are counterfeit are from China. Sometimes by the naked eye you can't tell, but sometimes it's that bad you can. But you look and you can see the scratches and how it's not machined properly to a nice finish.
So when Steve finds a counterfeit good, he seizes it. Then he figures out the item's MSRP, using the brand's website and CBP's internal database.
This one here would be about $11,000. That's the MSRP, what the manufacturer would be losing had this been genuine. These are generally on the internet for about $200.
Back in his workshop, John is figuring out whether this Rolex is counterfeit. After 25 years in the industry, he usually knows what to look for.
I'm looking at the color of the case. This piece is not the same color as this piece. This is 18-karat gold. We always have to check, because I can't take a chance on paying for it, #1, or selling it to someone else if I'm not sure.
One of the most reliable ways to test gold Rolex parts is a scratch test on a black stone made of quartz. Then he adds a few drops of nitric acid, which dissolves any material that isn't gold.
And there you go. Wow. The acid did not dissolve the gold. Over here, the acid dissolved the gold. It is not authentic.
But most of the time, he can spot a fake with the naked eye.
We could usually spot these just based on the symmetry of the case. They don't have that nice Rolex slope. The other, obvious thing that you look at, if you look at the amount of space between the face and the glass, you will see that it is very high. It's probably got an extra 1.5 millimeters.
John also has his son James help with fraud detection.
And I scroll through hundreds of listings, and I pick out the 10 that are fake.
The threat of counterfeits hasn't stopped sellers or buyers, though. Rolex is also getting in on the secondhand market, launching its own program to sell pre-owned Rolexes. Younger generations are fueling this new demand surge, and they're finding out about these old watches on TikTok.
I saw this watch. It's a 36mm white gold with a factory diamond dial. Can you pull it out for me?
John's son and his friend Tyler McCorsky have helped him build a huge social media following.
Buckley's with us today. Let's get it.
The bread and butter is the negotiations. People like to see them, so we want to give people what they want. But our other thing that we really do well is more so education content.
Today, we're going to show you how to change the battery on Quartz watch.
John teaches audiences the same lessons on TikTok he showed Tyler when he was still a kid.
The first time I ever sold a watch for Buckley, I was 8 years old, and it was a rubber swatch. Remember those? The rubber swatch watches. And he says, I need $5 on each one. Go sell them wherever, school, wherever, and keep whatever's left after the 5. As far as the whole hustle and the whole grind, I got that Wimbledon for you if you want it. I actually enjoy the going out there and trying to make money aspect of this business. 15-2. Thank you.
Despite all these new players, John isn't worried about the competition.
You go by these guys who fancy themselves, watch specialists, and they've been doing this for a year or two. Everybody's a specialist or an expert, okay? Listen, I'm a friggin' expert. I've been dealing with this stuff hand to hand. I've got the junk. McCorsky really left a cup of coffee down here? Did he really do that? That's just rude. That is just so rude.
Ecuador and India are the world's largest shrimp exporters, and a surge in cheaper imports has pushed the American shrimping industry to the brink of collapse.
Shrimp is the most consumed seafood in the United States, and in Louisiana, it's big business. The wild-caught crustaceans bring in about $1.3 billion for the state every year. But for the last few years, shrimpers have been hit with a perfect storm of rising fuel costs and rock-bottom prices.
That's one of the toughest jobs you could ever do. And if you're not getting your dues for it, why do it?
Producers say a flood of cheaper imported shrimp from India and Ecuador is sinking Louisiana's industry. But there's no way to feed America's skyrocketing demand without imports, which make up 90% of the shrimp the U.S. consumes. Up against these headwinds, companies up and down Louisiana's supply chain are closing up shop.
If you worked hard and you did the right thing, you could become a millionaire in the 80s and the 90s. Now you could barely make a living.
So how did the industry get this bad? And is it too late to save it? New Orleans chef Justin Kennedy insists on buying only wild shrimp caught by fishermen in the Gulf of Mexico.
We have never fried a foreign shrimp and ever served it to our customer. I'll never even look at it as an option.
He runs Parkway Bakery and Tavern, a New Orleans fixture since 1911, famous for these massive po' boys.
It's just one of those perfect little things that bring all walks of life together, and damn if it's a sandwich,
He can go through 3,000 pounds of shrimp a week.
So what this is a sink that we just have chilled water piped to, and it's just a quick thawing out our seafood. And if you look at them, they're peeled. We take that vein out because it's a cleaner shrimp. It butterflies it a little bit more to kind of hold the batter and just make it a better bite. I'm gonna scoop a heaping pile of it up. So we're gonna dust this up.
He coats them in only corn flour.
We just use the natural juices and moisture from the shrimp to pick up that flour. You lightly shake that off. 350 degrees, that's pure vegetable oil. This one right here is getting that golden brown color, right? Looking like little baby fried chicken. Watch this. You break that open. Look at that. Look at that little coating. Look at that Louisiana white meat in there. You know, you can't get no better than that.
That shrimp will eventually meet one of these giant loaves.
I think I'm almost 2 breads tall. Let's see. The French people kind of laugh at it because we call it French bread, but it's New Orleans French bread. This ain't French bread.
Justin hits the bread with some mayo, lettuce, and tomato.
And then we start dealing the shrimp.
2 handfuls?
Oh no, we put more than that. Yeah, I mean
4 handfuls?
It's a big sandwich, but you'll notice when you see this thing laid out in front of you, you'll be like, how am I going to eat all that? And then all of a sudden it's gone. So we do 1 fold, tuck these in, wrap it. We're gonna put 1 more on there. There you go. Parkway Bakery shrimp po' boy.
Where's that go now?
In my belly, baby.
About 1,000 people line up every day for these sandwiches, and Justin credits Local Shrimp for his award-winning recipe.
You know, I've had people try to sample me foreign. The batter won't stick on it. It's translucent when you cook it. You never see this pretty white meat. It still looks clear. It still looks like this when you cook it. But this Louisiana shrimp's true and true every time. Can't beat it.
Justin gets most of his shrimp from this factory, right up the road. Kristen Baumer is one of the few processors left in the area who only works with Gulf shrimp, just like his family has for over 130 years.
We've definitely seen a lot of processors go out of business. It's become more of a volume game because the margins are so tight.
His company processes 30 million pounds of shrimp annually.
So what we're doing is easy peeling shrimp. We're hand feeding it into a machine that splits the back of the shell, cuts the shell open, and then it allows, when you cook it, more flavor to get into the shrimp as well as making it easier to peel.
Kristen's team flash freezes all the crustaceans in this room. That's how they're able to transport the shrimp all over the country.
So they're picking shrimp for the second time to make sure they get all the defects out of it before it goes up.
This shaker separates the pieces so they won't stick together when they're frozen. Then they take a trip down this tunnel at minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
And after the shrimp hits the liquid nitrogen, it forms a crust on the shrimp, and then it moves slowly through the belt to freeze from the outside in. Don't stick your finger in unless you have a warrant that you want to burn up.
This machine portions the seafood into 5-pound bags of about 15 pieces. Each bag gets a traceability barcode.
Link it all the way back to the shrimp dock that it came from.
This processed product comes out to anywhere from $7 to $10 a pound, depending on the season.
With inflation, everything is getting more and more expensive, and running these processing plants and all this moving equipment and avoiding breakdowns takes a lot of capital.
People have been fishing and processing this shrimp in Louisiana for centuries, from Cajun fishermen to the indigenous people of the United Homa Nation. In the 1800s, shrimp was a staple food of the poor, and sellers couldn't transport it far because shrimp spoiled so easily in the Louisiana heat. That was until the mid-1800s, when several advancements brought shrimp beyond the local scene. Chinese immigrants introduced traditional drying techniques that could preserve the shrimp, and the first canning factory in New Orleans opened up in 1875. But fresh shrimp transported on ice was expensive, so it took on a reputation as a luxury item, tossed into shrimp salads and perched in cocktails. By the 1950s, techniques to freeze shrimp and new refrigerated trucks sealed the deal. They allowed for seafood delivery as far away as the East Coast and Chicago. This was about the time that the shrimp imports into the U.S. from Mexico and then India began to take off. By 1970, demand across the U.S. had nearly tripled, and domestic shrimpers caught more to keep up, with Louisiana leading the pack. By the 90s, the state's shrimp and shellfish generated nearly $2 billion and supported 22,000 jobs. And come the turn of the century, shrimp became the most consumed seafood in America. At the same time, new tech helped farms in Asia and South America raise a lot more shrimp. In less than a decade, farming production skyrocketed nearly 200%, overtaking global catches of wild shrimp. In 2023, the U.S. imported 1.7 billion pounds, nearly as much as its population consumes. And these imports are often cheaper than wild-caught U.S. shrimp. That's because labor costs are lower in big shrimp farming countries like India and Ecuador, and their governments have subsidized these operations. In the U.S., domestic shrimp prices have dropped to compete with the low import prices. Meanwhile, shrimpers like Captain Lonnie Mayu Jr. are facing skyrocketing costs of operating a boat.
You're wasting fuel and ice if you don't catch anything.
Since the 1980s, he says a block of ice has gone from $14 to $26 today. A set of new nets more than doubled, and a gallon of gas more than tripled in price. At 82 years old, Lonnie, who goes by Knuckles, hasn't given up trawling these waters, even after 6 decades. Starting in May, he heads out to catch brown shrimp, usually around sunset.
You have to go do your homework and know where they're going to be at.
He works independently, like most of the shrimpers here.
Right about there. A little too far.
During the day, brown shrimp may bury themselves in the sediment to hide from predators. But after dark, they often come out and roam in shallow water. Knuckles and his deckhand Steve drop these nets that skim the top of the water.
We're not dragging anything on the bottom.
He positions himself against the current, so the shrimp flow right into his nets.
The shrimp are not like fish. They can't really swim that great. They take a ride on the current.
Knuckles and Steve will pick out and keep just the shrimp. Sea turtles have an escape hatch in the net, and other animals get thrown back into the sea, where some dolphins are waiting to chow down on them.
If we don't pick up in that favor often enough, they'll take and bite it out the net.
They can literally rip a 4-foot hole in it, which is going to take a lot of time to fix.
Like this one. Knuckles pulls up the net so he can sew it closed.
You're going to lose everything, you know? You're going to be working for literally nothing.
This work can be grueling. Some shrimpers have big enough vessels they can stay out for weeks at a time. Knuckles has a smaller boat, so he fishes just until morning.
But it keeps you in shape.
But even after all this work, there's a chance they could have a bad run. Tonight, most of the nets were full of catfish.
Ooh, catfish.
See it, belly? They're full of shrimp.
Full of shrimp. They went in the net, ate all the shrimp. We ain't got a pound of shrimp. It's all catfish. I'm gonna try pushing up, going a little further up in the lake or something.
Knuckles spent $45,000 buying and fixing up his boat. It was meant to be his ticket to retirement. But now he's unsure that plan will work.
You know, for me to get out the business, I gotta sell it. I got no retirement, but I can't sell a boat. Can't give it away. Nobody wants it.
And most shrimpers agree it's getting harder to justify going out.
For this boat to leave the dock, it's gonna cost me over $1,000. It's killing us. The farmers is killing us.
Right now, nobody want to do it no more because they're struggling.
Milena Cheeve has been fishing for 8 years. Like 60% of the state's shrimp boat owners, she and her husband are originally from Southeast Asia.
With our education, there's nothing else we could do besides fishermen, especially like me and my husband, like in our mid-50s.
Milena and her husband weren't able to go to college, but they hoped shrimping would help their kids do the opposite.
Not enough to pay, especially when you have 2 kids in college. You're struggling.
Dock owners are feeling the impact too.
Because if we don't bring no shrimp, they don't make no money either. You know, when the shrimp boats go out, they're gonna kill the docks too.
That's a pretty shrimp.
Dean Blanchard's family has been buying and selling local shrimp for 5 generations.
I was born in a shrimp dock. When I was a baby, they used to put me in a shrimp box.
His dock, 2 hours south of New Orleans, was once one of the biggest shrimp suppliers in the country. But last year, he paid the lowest prices he ever has for the larger shrimp.
30-some years ago, they went down from $5 to $1.30.
That's because he's selling it for so little to the peeling factories.
Right now, it's the cheapest I ever seen in my life. I'm sick to my stomach. I ain't never seen nothing like this. Never in my life seen it this bad.
After 6 decades in the industry, Dean's no stranger to financial challenges. From the 2010 BP oil spill to big storms. His dock had $2 million in damages after Hurricane Ida hit in 2021.
Where you're standing right there wasn't even there after the storm. I mean, I've rebuilt this building at least 8, 9 times.
He never fixed up this part of his marina.
Oh, it brings tears to your eyes. I mean, everything you work for all your life is gone.
But imports, he says, have done even more damage.
We're directly correlated with imports. If a completely processed product is coming in for just over $4 a pound, that means our dockside prices have to be lower, the processors' prices are lower, so to be able to try to get that market share and keep it. So you're making the same amount of money that you would in 2000, but 22 years later.
Fewer boats can afford to go out, so less shrimp is landing on Dean's dock.
We're down to right under 20% of what we normally are for this time of the year.
On this day we visited in May 2023, not a single shrimp boat pulled up to unload.
It ain't gonna last too much longer like this. Thank God I'm almost 65 years old and I ain't got no kids in this business.
Dean estimates that 96% of the docks operating when he started out have since closed down.
I feel bad for the people because I know once I'm gone, they're gonna have to drive 50, 60, 70 miles to go sell their product.
Just like Knuckles, when Dean retires, he doesn't think anyone will buy the company.
Nobody can afford to take it over. The property is worth more than the business.
Louisiana still hauls in the most shrimp of any U.S. state, over 70 million pounds in 2023. But that's a small fraction, the roughly 2 billion pounds the U.S. consumes.
The American landings of shrimp cannot cover the overall consumption of shrimp.
Nearly 90% of the shrimp Americans eat is imported, and much of it is sourced using controversial practices. In 2021, an International Trade Commission analysis indicated that shrimp might be the U.S. seafood market most affected by illegal fishing. Like this boat, off the coast of Gambia. It had an illegal undersized net, and although the shrimp was labeled sustainable, 99.9% of the seafood on board were other species, like sharks and octopuses.
And a lot of time, that bycatch dies on the deck and just gets thrown back into the ocean.
But the majority of the shrimp the U.S. imports is farm-raised.
A lot of our shrimp comes from India, where there are huge environmental concerns, as well as ongoing allegations of human rights abuses and forced labor.
A 2024 Associated Press report found women in the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh were peeling frozen shrimp without protective gear, which can lead to frostbite.
It's kept incredibly cold to keep bacteria from proliferating. I don't know about you, but I don't want to hold ice cubes in my hand all day while I'm also trying to do very nimble work with my fingers. One of the huge issues is that these shrimp farms are isolated. They're far out on the coast. You know, there's not OSHA, there's no one protecting and making sure that the conditions are safe.
But they have few other options for work.
A lot of times when these aquaculture facilities are built, other economic resources in these areas disappear.
అందుకు ఫ్యాక్టరీకి వెళ్ళిపోతున్నామండి ఐస్ ఏం పడదండి మొన్న వెళ్తున్నాను వెళ్ళానండి నేను కాళ్ళ నొప్పులు కానీ నడుము నొప్పులు కానీ ఉంటాయండి నుంచొని ఉంటాం కదమ్మా తెల్లగడ్డలు వెళ్ళి
Arugula Baby is still trying to pay off an $8,500 loan she took out when her son was dying of liver disease. Since he passed, she's been raising her grandchildren alone. To get to the peeling shed, she has to pay for transportation and 25 cents to a recruiter. She earns below $4 every day, $2 under the country's minimum wage.
A
lot of times we will see a woman being threatened for her own safety or her family's safety unless she works, unless she meets certain quotas.
Beyond the human cost, there's also an environmental one. In India, most of the farms are along coastlines, where water is plentiful and mangrove forests thrive.
Those mangroves go through deforestation. They're pulled out, they're blown up with dynamite. So we lose that nursery habitat for other sea creatures, and we lose our coastline protection.
When that happens, shrimp can have 10 times the carbon footprint of beef.
Next, these really big ponds are dug into the land. So the shrimp live in these ponds.
Chemicals and excrement from shrimp pens can leach out into surrounding environments. They can cause algae blooms and dead zones, disrupt ecosystems, and contaminate water. Shrimp farms around the world have been criticized for using antibiotics to treat illness in their ponds.
If you've ever ridden the subway home at rush hour, you know how it is. You're in tight, you're squeezed in tight. There's great opportunities for sickness to spread. And it's that exact same situation in these ponds, which is why antibiotic use is so incredibly high.
That overexposure can lead to antimicrobial resistant superbugs, a health concern that's estimated to have caused nearly 1.3 million deaths around the world in 2019. And some antibiotics, like nitrofurans, have been linked to liver damage and cancer. In the US and European Union, almost all of these kinds of drugs are banned.
So you could end up eating something that's illegal here.
In 2023, the US Food and Drug Administration turned away 51 shipments of shrimp because of banned antibiotics. But the organization checks just about 2% of imports.
So what happens with that other 96 to 98% of seafood that's coming in?
The major health concern here is the lack of testing of imported shrimp, the amount of banned substances that may be carried in these shrimp.
A 2017 LSU study found that 30 out of 42 samples tested from stores around Baton Rouge had antibiotics or antimicrobials.
And that's largely due to the fact that the FDA is responsible for more than 50 million imports annually. And there's just not enough work power to inspect everything coming in.
In the last year, the U.S. Department of Commerce has imposed duties on shrimp from India, Vietnam, and Ecuador. But these efforts, Louisianan shrimpers tell us, haven't been enough to help their incomes. Imported shrimp is still flooding the market. That's why locals like Kristen have been advocating for more regulation. He's a part of the Louisiana Shrimp Task Force, which works with the state government on long-term solutions.
We need country of origin labeling on restaurant menus, so at least when people buy, they're buying and making a choice.
In 2019, the Louisiana legislature passed a law requiring restaurants to disclose if their shrimp is imported. But some restaurants still passed off imported as domestic. The state's health department has handed down 2,600 violations since the law went into effect, but no restaurants were ever fined. In May 2024, the governor signed a bill for heavier fines on restaurants that mislabel seafood. If they're busted, they could be fined up to $2,000. While Justin says he'll never touch imported shrimp, he can understand why restaurants turn to it when the local stuff gets expensive.
They're looking for a good product that will get the register to ring, and so you can't blame them either.
With dock prices so low, he paid $4 a pound in 2023, almost half of what he was paying 2 years ago.
I understand that. When I get a cheap price, I know the shrimpers out there in the boats are probably getting hammered. But if it went back to $7 a pound, I'd still buy it. I just have to go up on my price.
A price he says he's lucky his customers would probably pay.
You're talking to one of the busiest po' boy shops in the city. What about the corner stores who are just living from day to day? There has to be some kind of medium. I just hope it'll work itself out. This has been little, small holes pecking away for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you know? And it's coming where, it's starting to take water. We're going down, you know, in the seafood industry.
The fact is, the U.S. eats so much shrimp that the stuff caught in the Gulf could never cover it all. So farm crustaceans will probably always fill that gap.
Got to import because we can't supply the whole United States. But put a quota on it.
It has to come down from Washington. There has to be some work done up there with like regulating the import.
Dean wants federal assistance for shrimpers.
Yeah, there wouldn't be a farmer left in business if they had to live like we live. They're being subsidized for this. Shrimpers should be considered farmers of the sea, but we're not.
More inspections of seafood at U.S. ports and better traceability of shrimp from boat to plate would also help. But some experts say it comes down to better consumer awareness of the health benefits of wild-caught shrimp over farmed, like how the salmon industry got people to pay more for wild-caught thanks to messaging that it was more nutrient-dense.
If people would know exactly what they're buying and they know exactly what they're feeding their kids, they wouldn't mind paying a couple of cents more for a product that don't have antibiotics.
In the grocery store aisle, don't be fooled by tricky labeling, like Product of USA or Prepared in the USA. That could be referring to where the shrimp was last processed, not necessarily where it was caught. Flip to the back of the package and look for the phrase farm-raised or wild-caught in, followed by a country name. That should tell you where it's from.
Purchase U.S. farmed or U.S. wild-caught shrimp. In the U.S., farm shrimp are held to very strict regulations in regards to what antibiotics they can use and how much.
And when you're at a restaurant,
I always ask, where's that shrimp from? And if that restaurant can't answer that, then I don't order it. Or maybe we should just eat a little less shrimp and take it back to being a special occasion item.
Backed by consumer awareness, maybe then shrimpers can save their sinking ship.
We have to have it, and we will always have it. Parkway Bakery will always have Louisiana shrimp. I'll get on a boat my damn self, you know?
Italy exports more than $1 billion worth of marble and natural stone every year, supplying some of the world's most prestigious builders and designers. At the center of that industry is Carrara, home to the quarries that have shaped Italian culture and architecture for centuries.
In Carrara, Italy, extracting Calcutta marble doesn't always go as planned.
Però si pensava che non andasse, invece è andato e si è aperto.
It'll take more work to fix, but luckily it's still usable. And in 4 days, it'll be processed into one of the most expensive marble slabs in the world. Just one slab can cost over $10,000. So how is Calcutta mined from mountains? And what makes it so expensive? Marble has been used for centuries by artists and designers. But Calcutta marble isn't just any kind of marble. A square foot of some Calcutta can cost over $400, more than 4 times the price of high-end Carrara marble, which is mined in the same mountains. Its warm, ivory-white background and thick gold or gray veins sets Calcutta apart from other marbles. But the key to Calcutta's price is its rarity. It's found only in the Apuan Mountains of Carrara, Italy. Marble has been mined here for over 2,000 years. Extracting Calcutta marble from the mountains requires decades of experience. Enrico has been a miner for 40 years. He learned from his father, who worked at the same quarry.
Ci vuole l'esperienza, ci vuole la visione della cava, i difetti, i fronti di cava, stare a vedere.
It's important that miners have a trained eye and are precise. They need to work around the mountain's defects to avoid the risk of the marble breaking. These flaws affect where the miners can extract, how much they can extract, and eventually, how much they can sell.
Per il taglio del blocco, per tirar fuori il blocco si cerca dei segni nel monte, nella bancata, nel fronte, o un difetto, o un tipo di macchia, o saprei un finimento, sono tutte cose che fanno parte della cava, ecco.
Despite Enrico's care and attention, he doesn't always get the result he wants.
Come abbiamo visto prima, che magari quando si ribalta si stacca un difetto che magari si prevedeva, però ci può essere anche di dietro che non lo vedevi. Quindi quando si ribalta la bancata, la criticità può essere quello lì.
But before they can detach the block, they have to drill and saw. In the first stage of extraction, miners use drills to make strategic holes in the mountain. They then run diamond braid cords through these holes, cutting the marble into a block. The machinery is kept wet to protect the marble as chainsaws help detach the block from the mountain. An average block is 12 cubic meters and can weigh 36 metric tons. It's then carefully loaded into a truck, which brings it to a processing facility. Here, the Calcutta marble blocks are sliced into slabs. At this stage, processors can't afford to make a mistake and risk ruining the rare marble delivered to them. They mount over 100 very thin blades onto a wet saw, and the cutting begins. The saw cuts slabs as thin as 2 centimeters. Then they're prepared for shaping and polishing. The slabs are first sanded and pre-smoothed. Then they're prepared for resination, or the application of resin to fill any cracks or holes in the slab. It's also used to attach broken pieces, like the ones that cracked at the quarry.
Questa è in pratica il blocco quando è arrivato giù che ha il materiale, che noi resinandolo lo rendiamo utilizzabile.
And with marble as rare as Calcutta, one mistake can have a big impact on the quality and final price of the slab.
La fase più importante in pratica è tutta una fase importante. Se la prima fase non è stata eseguita correttamente, successivamente le varie fasi non vengono eseguite correttamente. Quindi dobbiamo iniziare da subito, dalla prima fase a farla correttamente. Quindi la lastra deve essere omogenea, levigata su tutta la sua superficie, nella larghezza della lastra, anche sui vari 4 angoli.
After Sergio checks that the resin was applied evenly, he moves it under UV light to dry. These steps ensure that the slab has no flaws.
Dopo il materiale viene posato per pavimenti, rivestimenti che diventerebbero neri, quindi prenderebbero lo sporco e perderebbe poi il valore la lastra.
Then the Calcutta slab reaches its final stage. It's honed and polished until it almost sparkles, becoming, as Sergio says, shiny to the eye. It's now ready to be sent to the buyer. Calcutta is extracted and processed on a per-order basis. Producers consult the customer every step of the way. This way, the Calcutta is perfectly customized to the client's needs, because once it's fully processed, there's no going back. Even with these risks and high costs, customers still want Calcutta.
Our customers prefer Calcutta because it's a luxury, it's a high-end product, it's timeless, and it's classical. It fits very well with any kind of furniture.
White marbles like Calcutta are more desirable because they have fewer flaws than darker marbles, so they require less maintenance and repairs. Calcutta is in even higher demand than other white marbles like Carrara. The veins look crisper, less faded. There are generally fewer veins in Calcutta, making it easier to incorporate in exterior and interior design. And it has a softer contrast than other high-end marbles, like Statuario, which has a milky background, darker gray veining, and fewer changes in color.
This is a typical use of Calcutta. It is made in this case to make kitchen countertop, and you can see the typical Calcutta vein.
But certain Calcutta is even more expensive. Calcutta Gold, referring to the vein color, is especially hard to find. While standard Calcutta can cost over $10,000, a Calcutta Gold slab can reach more than $29,000. And while specific pricing is considered an industry secret, Memo says selling isn't an issue.
In the last 40 years, demand for Calcutta has actually increased. And even during times of crisis, people have had a big desire for this type of material.
But this growing demand isn't welcomed by everyone, especially Carrara locals. Sawing extraction techniques have led to slurry and waste being carried to nearby environments through runoff water. This has impacted local groundwater and the people who need it. And environmentalists warn the overexploitation of the mountains will only make things worse. But that hasn't shaken demand for Calicut, or marble in general. The global marble market is estimated to grow to $68.5 billion by 2027. So Calicut will likely remain one of the world's priciest natural resources.
Most of the world's sugar comes from sugarcane. But the plant is so difficult to harvest that farmers usually set their fields on fire first. That's to get rid of leaves so they can easily collect the valuable cane, full of sweet juice. In Florida, the biggest producer in the US, the smoke clouds can be seen from miles away.
We estimated that between 1 and 6 deaths likely happen across South Florida as a result of sugarcane fires.
It used to be the same story down in Brazil, the largest sugar producer in the world. But a few decades ago, farmers figured out how to harvest without burns. So why does the US keep setting its fields ablaze? And what will it take to shift this multi-billion-dollar industry? For centuries, workers across the world harvested sugarcane by hand. Clearing tough leaves with a machete was time-consuming and took a toll on workers' bodies. Burning made it much faster and saved companies money. It also helped drive out unwanted pests like insects and rats. But nowadays in Brazil, most farmers harvest it raw without the need for burning. The method is known as green harvesting.
E a cana é cortada em pequenos toletes, que a gente consegue ver ali depois em cima da carga.
José Leandro manages nearly 80,000 acres of sugarcane in São Paulo.
Hoje uma colhedora colhe aí por volta de 1.000 toneladas por dia. Colhe aí por mais de 100 homens.
This circular saw first cuts off the top of the cane. A fan separates leaves from the stalk and then blows the unwanted plant material onto the ground.
Essa é uma cana. Aqui são as palhas que são retiradas na hora da colheita mecanizada e ficam no campo, juntamente com essa parte também que fica para virar matéria orgânica e adubar os canaviais.
Brazil's red soils are dry and low in organic matter. The leaves shield the ground from water loss and erosion and keep it rich in nutrients.
A gente não consegue nem ver o solo. A palha fica toda cobrindo o solo.
Raw cane also retains the valuable juice for longer.
É muito legal ver a diferença do pessoal que trabalhava com um facão, hoje operando essas máquinas grandes, super tecnológicas.
Tiago is the agricultural director of this farm. He's proud of the changes they've made, but he and José recognize there are downsides.
A partir do momento que você não queima o canavial, você tem os inimigos naturais de algumas pragas que nós temos no canavial aumentando e cada vez mais presentes.
Many farms have to rely on pesticides to keep them out. The raw cane is also harder to process because it has extra leaf litter and impurities. Factories had to develop new chemicals to break it all down.
A indústria ela teve que ir se adaptando, né?
Nós precisamos incluir uma enzima, né? Porque a palha da cana vem com muito amido.
They shred the cane and then crush it inside mills. The juice is pressed from the pulp and purified, then boiled and reduced to a syrup and spun in a centrifuge to separate the sugar crystals. The process is not entirely without fire. Leftover fibres called bagasse are burned in an incinerator that powers the facility. But here in Brazil, it's not all about sugar. More than half of the sugarcane harvested is used to make a biofuel called ethanol, and that has been a key incentive to stop the burns.
É combustível de fonte renovável muito mais limpo que outros combustíveis, principalmente os combustíveis fósseis, né?
Ethanol burns cleaner than gasoline and emits 62% less CO2, but only if you're not setting the fields on fire to begin with. The Brazilian government began investing in its ethanol program in 1975, when oil prices soared.
O Brasil tem condições de se tornar o maior produtor mundial de álcool em poucos anos.
Sugarcane production tripled in just one decade. The second production spike came in the 2000s, when the government invested in flex fuel cars that could run on ethanol alone. Since the 70s, the amount of land used for the crop grew 5 times in size, mostly in the state of Sao Paulo. But as the farms spread, so did the burns. That made Brazil's ethanol a hard sell in international markets, as more countries were looking to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In 2002, the state of Sao Paulo signed a law giving farmers about 3 decades to end the burns. New public policies, government funding, and a spike in foreign investments helped farmers phase out burns. And it worked. By 2014, 90% of the cane in Sao Paulo was green harvested. Today, Brazil is the second largest producer of ethanol in the world, making more than 8 billion gallons in 2023, behind only the United States.
Toda mudança de cultura, né, não é fácil. Ela foi diminuindo gradativamente. Então isso ajudou, né?
But burning is still practiced in many top-producing countries across the world, including India and Thailand. And it's common in the winter months in Florida, where large sugar companies like US Sugar and Florida Crystals operate. Residents who live near farms often see giant clouds of smoke forming from their backyards.
And this will continue on throughout the day, spread it over hundreds of homes.
The plumes are so large you can even spot them in satellite imagery. The state issues more than 8,000 permits for burns every season. Most happen in the rural region of Palm Beach County, known as the Glades. On windy days, burns aren't allowed, but when there's only a breeze, they are permitted if it's blowing inland, which keeps the smoke away from the more populated, wealthier areas. There are no burns in the summer, which is when Reggie Goodgame and his wife bought their home.
Just felt comfortable. And then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose, man.
I thought, call 911. Somebody's house is burned there. I didn't know what's going on.
Within 2 years, Reggie's wife Naomi began having asthma attacks. It's hard to prove the burns caused them, but the couple don't see it as a coincidence.
That bad smoke coming to my lung, my son's lung, my husband's lung, my dog's lung, not only us, that smoke go everywhere.
EPA data shows Glades residents are among the most at risk for asthma in the country.
This one was 5 minutes from my house back there, and I'm hoping air go blow to west so they don't come to our house. That's why I was praying. How long they do make them do it? Why nobody stop it?
All fires release toxic gases and particles. Some particles, called PM2.5, have a diameter 30 times smaller than a human hair. They can go deep into our lungs and make their way into our bloodstream. Inhaling too many can cause breathing difficulties and increase the risk of cancer and heart disease. A Florida State University study found a higher concentration of those particles during the burning season in winter months.
We found that the fine particles generated by burning sugarcane is about equal to the fine particles that are produced by all of the vehicles in the state of Florida.
The $13 billion US sugar industry often disputes pollution claims.
Many statements from the sugar industry have suggested that they have zero impact on air quality. Well, the evidence shows otherwise.
US Sugar, one of the largest producers in Florida, has released reports showing that air quality in the glades is better than the state average. But because the burns are so localized and often short-lived, air quality monitors don't always pick up the smoke. And local residents who get in the way of the plumes told us they see and feel the effects immediately.
From many, many studies across the globe, we know that inhaling higher concentrations leads to higher mortality.
We reached out to US Sugar, Florida Crystals, and the Sugarcane Growers Cooperative of Florida, but they didn't respond. Many farms in Florida already have machines similar to the ones in Brazil, but here they're mostly used to harvest cane after the fields are already burned. Farmers will sometimes opt for green harvesting when it rains or when it's too windy. But burns are still the norm because they're faster and reduce the need for pesticides.
So if we want to reduce pest pressure and we want to reduce pesticides and we want to be the best stewards of the land, sometimes that burn is just the best answer to being the best environmental stewards they can be.
Another problem is that Florida's moist soil is already high in organic matter, so adding too much leaf material can affect the quality of the crops.
It kind of produces an environment that's, not really selecting for the plant to just jump up and start retuning over again. That's probably the biggest difference that I see between the science of sugarcane here in South Florida versus Brazil. It's our environment.
Unlike in Brazil, there are no regulations that require or incentivize green harvesting here.
Let's say you do green harvesting and you have all these pest issues and you don't have a healthy regrowth of the crop. In other parts of the world, sometimes the government will essentially bail these farmers out. So, if they would really want us all to switch to green, there would need to be a lot of tax dollars being spent to the farmer when their crop fails.
The US does subsidize sugar production, with an estimated net cost to the economy of $1 billion each year. But the majority of the US subsidies go to large producers of more popular crops like wheat, soy, and corn. And the US makes most of its ethanol from corn, leaving little room for a potential sugarcane ethanol market.
There's no farmer out there that wants to go out and spray pesticides or wants to go out and burn. But at the end of the day, that's just not an option.
Meanwhile, Reggie feels like he has little choice but to stay and fight.
I don't want to give up this house for this burning. But something, has to happen, man. Can't keep burning and burning.
America is one of the biggest paper exporters in the world, shipping out over $15 billion in 2024. International Paper is the country's biggest producer.
This massive pile of pine trees will be turned into cardboard packaging. A single box can contain material from thousands of trees and pass through the hands of hundreds of workers.
They're like, it's just a box. And I say, no, it ain't. A lot goes into it.
If you've used a cardboard box in the US today, there's a 1 in 3 chance that International Paper made it. It's the world's largest paper company. Cardboard is essential for countless industries, protecting items as they move on trucks and ships. And the good news is that it's one of the most recycled materials in the world. But if so much of it gets reused, why do we still have to cut down millions of trees? And is it possible to make environmentally friendly cardboard? This mill in Georgia is just one of hundreds of facilities operated by International Paper. It runs 24/7 to meet demand from online shopping, grocery stores, and more. But no one in this industry would call their product cardboard.
Why don't you like to use the word cardboard?
Because it's not cardboard. Insiders call it corrugated packaging, a wavy layer sandwiched between two flat outer sheets. But yeah, most people call it cardboard. making it starts with living trees. Forester Alex Singleton walked us through an area whose trees were sold to International Paper 2 years ago.
It has since been replanted with longleaf pine.
But it will still take decades for the new crop to mature.
For many foresters, we only see a site harvested once during our careers. From this stage to there would probably be around 30 years.
After harvesting, landowners make money selling their trees to different industries, which makes them into things like lumber, telephone poles, and of course, paper. The idea is to turn forests into an investment so more people plant and maintain them.
Without young, healthy forests, our industry could not be successful. I don't view logging or clear cutting as negative, it's just the start of a process.
But critics say that replanting trees is not the same as letting them grow.
This is one of the most industrial and heavily logged forests on the planet.
The southern U.S., sometimes called America's wood basket, is home to 2% of the world's forested land. Yet it produces nearly 20% of our pulp and paper products, which either means it's highly productive or highly exploited, depending on who you ask. On a typical day, about 300 trucks loaded with freshly cut trees drive up to this mill. The first stop is the wood yard. Some of the trees are set aside into these massive piles, which ensure the mill can sustain round-the-clock operations. They come from farms and forests within 120 miles. A sprinkler keeps them wet so they stay fresh and to reduce the risk of fire. A crane scoops trees from the pile and drops them into a machine that knocks off the bark.
With a debarking drum, you're removing bark. You know, I tell kids similar to like a potato peeler.
This process creates tons of leftover bark, which will be burned for energy. The debarked trunks travel through a chipper and pile up here.
On that wood chip pile, we can keep up to around 100,000 tons of chips.
It'll only take the mill about 10 days to work through this mountain. A conveyor belt feeds into the next step, pulping. Pine is made of long, stringy fibers held together by a natural glue-like material called lignin. Paper makers want the fibers, but not the glue, so they use steam and chemicals to dissolve it. The reaction can create gas that smells like sulfur. If you've ever noticed a rotten odor while driving by a paper plant, that's probably why. International Paper says its plants are built to capture a lot of those gases, which cuts down on smell. The fibers are covered in a toxic mix of chemicals and tree residue, so they have to be cleaned.
That liquor that's washed off gets evaporated and consolidated and goes into what we call a recovery boiler.
In other words, the plant burns those goopy leftovers, creating steam and chemicals that can go back through the process and save energy.
We're really plants inside of a plant, so we have our own chemical plant, our own power plant.
In fact, this mill makes about 75% of its own energy on site. IP is also burning less coal than it used to, which helps cut down on factory emissions. But trees hold a lot of carbon, and the company's own sustainability report says carbon released by processing the trees was more than double its emissions from burning fossil fuels in 2022. Before the pulp becomes paper, workers add used cardboard to the mix. Old packaging gets a new start in this warehouse.
The boxes that we use here in the recycle plant come from local retailers and grocery stores up to a 300-mile radius from the mill.
Katie Fries has worked in this recycling mill for 3 years. She says people still have a lot of misconceptions about the process.
Our process is designed to take out the stuff like grease and tape. Just recycle any corrugated box you have, whether it has tape on it or food in it. It can be used to make paper again. Then you can recycle a pizza box.
Every day, this mill recycles 500 tons of used cardboard. Each ton saves trees, energy, and water. Saving water is key because nearly every step of papermaking uses lots of it. The used cardboard also gets pulped, using water and chemicals, then mixes with fresh fibers. Workers simply call this massive contraption the paper machine. It presses the pulp flat and squeezes out water. Then it sends the mixture through a series of dryers, heated to over 200 degrees Fahrenheit.
As it goes down the machine, the sheet gets drier and drier.
And after all that, you still only have paper. To become corrugated packaging, the rolls head to a box plant, like this one in Illinois. Here, flexible paper becomes sturdy boxes.
The heartbeat of the plant is the corrugator.
Corrugating is how the packaging's middle layer gets that distinctive wavy shape. The waves are actually called flutes, and they're what gives this type of packaging its strength.
There are different types of flutes. Smaller ones print better, aren't as good for stacking strength, and the larger ones don't print as well, but they're better for stacking strength.
This plant can make boxes in over 1.6 million different designs.
The smallest box I've ever made was about the size of a ring box. The largest box I've ever made in one of my facilities was for a washing machine.
After gluing the layers together, finishing touches include printing on graphics and cutting the sheets into their final shapes. To save space, most boxes shipped to customers flat, and any trimmings or waste pieces can be recycled right back into the process. In the US, more than 70% of used cardboard gets recycled, which is much higher than the rates for aluminum, glass, or plastic.
Corrugating paper is easy to recycle because the supply chain supports it, so there's value in it.
It also helps that nearly 80% of Americans can recycle it using bins right on their curbs. So why does the industry still use up so many trees? Part of it is that old cardboard can't be recycled indefinitely. The EPA says it can only go through the process about 7 times. Each time it goes through pulping and blending, the long, strong pine fibers get a bit shorter and weaker. And eventually, the degraded paper bits simply wash through the screens and out of the process. So recycling is very important. But even if 100% of boxes got reused, making new ones would still mean cutting down trees. Some experts say the big question is whether the industry manages forests responsibly. International Paper gets more than 90% of its fiber from trees in the southern US, where the vast majority of woodlands are on private property.
What we do is we provide a viable market for that landowner's trees such that they will have the income or revenue to be able to pay for the reforestation that takes place on their lands.
Foresters and paper companies argue that without that market, people might just sell their land, potentially losing forests forever to agriculture, parking lots, or other uses. Data from the University of Maryland shows that tree cover in the US today is about the same as it was in the year 2000.
For me, as a forester, it must mean that we're doing our job right, that we're taking care of the environment, that we're promoting forest growth.
But measuring forest area is complicated. To start, not everyone agrees what a forest even is.
Pine plantations are not forests. Those are tree farms that lack the diversity, the structural diversity, the biological diversity that a lot of these species depend on.
An environmental nonprofit called the Dogwood Alliance says that tree farms have been replacing natural forests. That could potentially have a global impact. Some experts estimate that natural forests are 40 times better than plantations at storing carbon, which makes them crucial to slowing climate change. Forests have lots of other benefits too, like filtering our drinking water and reducing erosion. Certain forestry techniques, like leaving some large trees in place, can help planted forests retain those benefits.
I think there are ways to sustainably manage forests without taking out the larger trees and completely destroying the structural complexity of a forest. But that takes really skilled, targeted forestry, and that's not always what happens.
Ultimately, the world uses a lot of paper, which has to come from somewhere. You might see certifications stamped on boxes. Those are supposed to indicate they're made of trees that were harvested sustainably. International Paper says that more than 30% of the fibers it used in 2022 came from forests with one of those certifications.
I think there is a way for industry and conservation to coexist in southern forests, but there has to be a good faith effort on all sides.